Three people subbing tonight, Stephen and John and Dennis. We have apologies for absence from Peter Southcott and from Stanley. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? No. Minutes of the previous meeting, can we agree those please? Yes? Thank you. For the public's information, the Planning Applications Committee works on this basis. We have opened up with an agenda item with the officer speaking to the report, giving you background information. And then when that's finished, if there are objectors, each person will have 3 minutes to speak. And we have a traffic light system here, red, orange, green. When it goes to orange, it means you've got a minute left. It's always helpful if you can recognise it's going to red and stop, otherwise I will have to ask you to stop. As soon as objectors had a chance to raise their objections, we then go to agents who are present to put their case, and then when that's finished, the officer will take any issues from those discussions and respond to them, and then once it moves to members, that's the end of the involvement with the public. The members will ask questions and then make comments, and then we will make a decision on every agenda item tonight. We will take the agenda, if you're happy, members, in this order. Start with agenda item 10, which is Merton Hall. Then we move to agenda item 8, 14 Highbury, and 12 Old Rathlicians, and then the rest of the, it would be 5, agenda item 5, Alwyne Mansions, 15, 5 Highbury, and then 6, 7, 9, 11, 13, and 14. Are we okay? So we're beginning with the Merton Hall application.
Thank you, Chair. If I can first draw your attention to the main material sheet, you'll see there's a couple of further items on there. And under item 10, one is a further response from the Metropolitan Police. We also have a summary of 4 further objections to the application. As we're aware, the application is for variation proposed to condition 8 to extend the use of the church beyond 10 p.m. to 10:30, Monday to Sunday, and beyond that time on no more than 10 separate occasions a year. No church service or similar activity shall take place after 10 p.m. Monday to Sundays, and these restrictions would not apply to administrative use, including small meetings of no more than 15 persons. Members will be aware of the history of this particular site. I don't intend to go through it in any great detail. Everyone's very knowledgeable about the property itself. The application has been made by the church, clearly in terms of operational requirements there, wanting some further relaxation in terms of the hours of operation. The previous planning permission did allow for written requests for extensions to time on the application in terms of all-night events, etc. For obvious reasons, churches do that. And officers have negotiated a limit of 10 throughout the year in this particular case, basically so that it doesn't have to be that continual request to the council 10 times a year for these all-night occasions or services to occur. Officers feel that the extra half hour on the opening hours would take the closing to 10:30, and that's beyond the usual, where we normally say 11 o'clock is the time where we would expect quiet in properties such as this and restaurants, etc., if necessary next to residential properties. So there would be that half hour clearing up time for people to leave. The services would finish earlier, and people would leave the building by that particular time. So officers consider the proposal itself is acceptable for that reason. Thank you.
Okay, can I call on John Chambers, please?
I think actually Alison is going to go first.
Okay, Alison. Dear committee members, please see 2 photos in your information bag. I represent the residents of Boscombe Road and the surrounding roads. Condition 8 says, use hereby permitted shall operate only between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m, Monday to Sunday. This condition is vital and was put in place to safeguard the surrounding residential homes in line with the Development Plan Policy 7.15, which states it's necessary to separate sources of noise from noise-sensitive developments like housing and control noise at source where possible. This wall is surrounded by family homes on 3 sides. Its rear wall is 5 metres from gardens and 15 metres from children's bedrooms. This is why Condition 8 was put in place. Nothing has changed since then. Our children still need a decent night's sleep to function the next day. The Elam Church have yet to move into this building, but they want to extend their hours again. The original 9 p.m. finish was extended to 10 p.m. in the previous application, and this facility had to include the design of a 97 square metre foyer so the congregation could disperse. Elam Church insists that Condition 8 is too restrictive. They want to operate until 10:30 every day, but they also want to operate for an unspecified amount of time beyond this, 10 more times a year. The applicant has not specified what these events might be or how long they will last. It is not a change of condition, it is a completely new request and should not even be up for debate. Elam Church were described by Councillor on this committee in 2017 as being more suited to an industrial location. In fact, the police were called out to Elam's previous industrial location in Hyde Park 18 times in 8 years. The noise impact assessment in 2017 stated that without acoustic doors, the scheme would not meet the criteria set out. So the building was designed to ensure that the required attenuation is achieved only with the appropriate controls in place. Hours of use being a key control. We still have no idea how much noise the large roof ventilation units will generate, and these will be audible until 10 p.m. already. This year, PC Sim Clubs wrote to the council acknowledging that groups of people returning to cars up to and beyond the 11 p.m. period of low noise would potentially be very disruptive for local residents and likely cause nuisance calls to the police and council. In summary, the applicant is currently allowed to operate 15 hours a day, every single day of the year. This is not an industrial location. Children and families cannot suddenly become nocturnal. There must be some obligation on the new owners to embrace and show willing to adapt to their new surroundings. With hundreds of objections, I implore you to reject this.
Some context. In 2017, this committee acquiesced to the demands of Elam and agreed to spend £4 million moving them to Merton Hall, despite 5,000 petitioners, 450 individual letters of objection. False supporting documents were presented, and amidst irregular procedures, the plan to kit out a building and deliver a vast edifice with lavish facilities far superior to any required by the reinstatement was agreed. That contract that governs the land swap and the quiet gifting of the freehold to Elam remains unpublished, but the demands from Elam continue and their cosy relationship with the council remains. Is it credible that the pastor of this church, who boasted of getting a £4 million church for free from his friends in high places, did not know that his services would need to run beyond the original and accepted planning limit of 9 p.m? And what sort of church needs to run administrative meetings after 10:30 p.m. at night? How will this be policed? Who will count these 15 administering souls? Before Elam had even taken possession of the building or the soundproofing measures tested, residents are supposed to accept the use of the building by up to 15 people, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, because that is what this application means. With all the concurrent noise, disturbance and pollution this will generate. Once again, documents submitted to support this application are totally false. Merton Hall is not adjacent to a bowls club. The Manor Club has been sold. It is now in the process, without any current planning permission, of having a basement car park excavated and is being totally redeveloped into apartments. So Elam will be surrounded by residential property. The Metropolitan Police have confirmed being called out at least 18 times in 8 years to Elam's previous home and have resisted and have raised concerns about extending these hours. which should be enough for councillors to reject this application, never mind the 200 plus individual objections from residents. If Elam had any respect for the neighbourhood, they would just accept the original restrictions ceasing all activities at 9 p.m. Elam's demands have already resulted in the destruction of a registered asset of community value. Elam is a charity with assets in excess of £139 million. It has been given the freehold of Merton Hall without covenants, allowing its future disposal at vast profit to themselves and loss to the residents. Some councillors may believe they are buying a stairway to heaven, or perhaps more tangible rewards here on earth, by showering £4 million of residents' money on a religious sect of 150 people, nearly half of whom live outside the borough. So is it any wonder that the police are now taking an interest in these financial transactions and related property deals? Enough is enough. Councillors must do the right thing and defend the residents from the latest selfish, unrealistic demand from Elam by rejecting this deceitful, disruptive and unenforceable application. Sorry if I went on.
Okay. Thank you. I can see that you're not happy. Can I call on Tim Snelson, please?
Thank you. Good evening. I'm an elder of the church, and I'm responsible for the music there. And I have to say, my children and my friends in Old Merton Park find the idea of me being the next Calvin Harris highly amusing on my acoustic guitar. But, you know, I live literally within a stone's throw of that building. So the operation of that building is very important to all my neighbours and all my friends. And as an engineer by profession, I have designed studios for Sky, Pinewood and the BBC. It is common practice to turn off mechanical plants during noise-sensitive times. So, I'm sure there are ways to manage such things. And I will certainly not be happy to bring the auditorium into service if there is even a hint of noise in the neighbouring gardens. Certainly my children need to sleep at night, and all my friends' children need to sleep at night. These gardens belong to my friends and neighbours. As noted in the Council's recommendation paper, though, this discussion tonight is not really about noise, because noise is enforced through the noise regulations. Our proposal is really about London logistics. People need to be able to go to town, work, get home from town, eat, and then go out to their evening meeting. I personally work near the post office tower at Euston. So it will take me an hour to get home after I finish my working day. Then if perhaps I'm allowed to eat before going back to church, and maybe even a change of clothing, that sets a realistic starting time for an evening meeting somewhere between about 7:45 and 8 p.m. So that begins to suggest that I'm watching the clock as soon as I walk in the front door of the church for a midweek meeting. So all we're really asking for is that the end time is relaxed a little bit so that we don't have to have negotiations with the council immediately about making things workable. Church service times were traditionally and historically set around the agricultural rhythms of milking and feeding. Nowadays, I would suggest they are dictated by the daily commute. So extending dispersal time by 30 minutes to allow us to hold people in the foyer while they gradually disperse, which is a well-used technique in stadia and major venues for mitigating the impact on surrounding homes, seems like a pragmatic and sensible idea to us. There's been much noise made about the sale of a community asset to a private organisation. It's perhaps therefore worth remembering that the heartbeat of any church is serving its local community. That's why we agreed to the council's requirements to move out of High Path to make way for a new secondary school that's vital to the educational needs of our community. We did not select Merton Hall. That is why we started and we still host the Merton Food Bank, which looks after many of the less able and disenfranchised members of our community. That is why we have hosted council consultation events on the High Path redevelopment and a number of other public events. And that is why we were more than happy to agree to the council's requirements for us to make the revamped Merton Hall still available for community users. For example, the expansion of Pelham School means that we can't fit our parents in to watch the kiddies' productions. But now we have a newly equipped hall at the end of the road that will be well capable of that. So we would no longer have to negotiate between wife and husband as to who gets to watch their child in the production. Or maybe a community choir or a charity dinner. All of these things suggest an event time that's probably longer than an hour. We've repeatedly stressed that all are welcome to use the building. The Eden Church also hosts a Brazilian and a Sri Lankan congregation. So to allow these communities to meet in their own language. But this means that we need to schedule services in 3 languages. And because the community availability of Merton Hall was safeguarded in the redevelopment agreement, I believe the value of the asset to the local community is really only limited by the vision of that community to come and ask to use it. But also, to some extent, it is restricted by the opening hours permitted. Personally, I've never come across a church with a curfew before, as we are all obliged to be good neighbours and abide by noise regulations. The dispersal time proposed tonight is long before that of pubs and restaurants, as mentioned by the officer, and which are arguably a far more significant noise issue. It's my sincere hope that the council have addressed noise design adequately in the building, and it's my firm support that the building can't be brought into operation unless those are proven by tests to be adequate. So really, all we're looking for with this motion is to agree a sensible functioning arrangement that facilitates the best utilisation of the recent investment in the Merton Hall community asset and operating hours that reflect the practical logistics of London commuters' lives. Thank you to the Council for your recommendation to grant, and thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Just one point, just to remind members the application, what it's about before it's about the extension time, as you've heard. A couple of other issues raised, one issue in particular about the procurement and the history of the property. That's not relevant to planning considerations this evening. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I am calling for this application to be rejected. The passionate voices from Amity will be heard this time. This time, within my church, submitted to application this year to first at 11 p.m. and now at 10 p.m. 7 more days a week, and we on 10 locations throughout the year. Also up to 15 people for meeting without any restriction or throughout the year. It is necessary. It is acceptable for our neighbourhood. No, even the local police were against it. Noise will be unheard throughout the night in our quiet area. I am there. With my hearing loss, I can hear cars late at night, but when Kitson Road is less busy. Yes, I have lived on Kitson Road for almost opposite Merton Hall for the last 15 years. May I point out that none of the council or workers lives on Kingston Road, and also none of the members of the PAC committee live on Kingston Road. The decisions are made by the council administration, constantly ignoring objection in the Abbey ward. They gave away our affordable building, demolish it, using over £4 million of our public money to rebuild very decent insurance need. And now we're asking for extended hours to make noise in our quiet air. Can any of you name any noisy building on Kingston Road open late at night for seven days a week? Therefore, why should they continue to get away with it? They know they can rely on the administration support. What happened to our voices? Why are we constantly being ignored? For this application, over 200 objections were made. Will we be ignored tonight? What do we get in return? I wonder whether an interest will be a thoughtful neighbour. May I remind you that they had problems late at night at their original place in Hyde Park, and the police were called. I fear that there be major parking problems at night on Kingston Road, where the space to park. No concession on parking has ever taken place. Also, may I remind you that the original location of Ellen Church years ago was located in a building very close to Kingston Road, and then they were forced to be relocated to Hyde Park simply because of parking problems. So Ellen Church will be back into the very same area. I find it laughable. My fellow councillors, please seriously consider the people's objections in Abbey Ward. Ellen has got Merton Hall, stolen from us, if I may say. Sadly demolished, rebuilt, and now they are pushing their luck for extension hours. The holding is appalling and a disgrace. Please listen to us and reject this application. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Over to members for questions, please. Councillor.
Chair, I just want to refer to what has been raised by a few objectors, and that's around the previous planning application. So there's a sense that actually the services were meant to end at 9 p.m, but there was an additional hour allowed for people to disperse slowly. So actually the hours have already been extended. Is that true?
I think as the application evolves, it's not unusual for planning applications. The carbon narrows will be adjusted on the way through. It's the final decision that counts. So if you're looking at the history of what was agreed at that time, that's the difference you're looking at now. There was the 10 p.m. until the 10:30. That's what you have in front of you this evening.
Planning consent for, is there anything to do with noise in the current planning consent? And if so, what decibels is that? And I have a second question depending on the answer.
Yes, if you look at your report, it's actually that the actual conditions are set out on. Just double check, they're in there. The original conditions on the original permission. It was on page 112. We've got conditions 9, 10, and 11 there that talk about environmental health conditions, basically from our environmental health experts who recommended those particular conditions on the original permission, related to sound, etc.
Yeah, but could you tell me what they are? I can see them, but I just need to.
Sorry, you want me to?
I want you to tell me. Yeah.
Oh, right, I see, right. Well, they're on page 112.
I want you to tell me.
Oh, right, so on page 2.
I just want to hear what you're going to say, and then because I have a second question, and it doesn't make sense unless you know what the first answer is.
I know I can read them out in terms of condition now, and it says, as a minimum, the proposed development should carry out in accordance with the noise insulation measures as detailed in the Rock Tech Acoustic Report, the reference, and O117 EPCW1, dated 25th 2017. The approved noise insulation measures shall be installed prior to the commencement of the use occupation and shall be permanently retained thereafter unless otherwise agreed in writing by the planning authority. There would then be another reason in there as well that hasn't copied over, and that's a standard reason that would go in. We've then got no music or other amplified sound generated from the premises shall be on the boundary of any adjacent residential building such as to constitute a statutory nuisance, nor shall the noise of the premises increase the ambient noise levels by more than 2 decibels on a day between the hours of 1900 and 7 a.m. in the morning, when expressed as LAEQ 15 minutes as measured at the boundary of the nearest residential property, unless otherwise agreed in writing by the local planning authority. Condition 11. Prior to the use of the development hereby approved, details of sound insulation attenuation measures shall be submitted in writing to the local planning authority to ensure that noise from the new plant machinery does not increase the background noise level by more than 2 decibels, BA, LA90, 5 minutes in brackets, with no increase in any 1/3 octave band between 50 Hz and 160 Hz.
In terms of a rock concert, a band with microphones, do we know what decibels that would give us?
The simple answer to that is no, I wouldn't. This time I presume every band, if you were to say band, would have a different noise level depending on what's plugged in, how many speakers,
Yeah,
etc. The point of the condition is that it looks at the boundary of the property to ensure that no matter how loud it is inside, it won't get outside. That's the whole concept.
So there's a door from the hall, I assume, that goes to this vestibule. Is that vestibule included in the noise condition?
Well, yes, the whole, I mean, in terms of the conditions worded, so the whole building, it's any noises from the building won't be causing any noise at the boundary to neighbouring residential buildings. So yes, that would be included.
So the vestibule, which is all glass at the front, what I'm trying to get to here is I'm trying to understand how you can have sort of sound deadening when it's just glass. I can't see where the sound deadening is.
My understanding is the vestibule at the front and the actual hall where the music is actually another section of the building.
Yes, it is, yes, yeah. But that's why I was asking the question, because this says the external limits, and that's the vestibule, where there isn't any sound deadening, and that's why I'm asking these questions.
Well, the reality is it would fail then, in terms of if that's the case, but obviously they just need to keep the door closed when the event is on, to that in the vestibule, and if the glazing is sufficient, which it should be sufficient, then they have to design it to the fact that it will be efficient. We've heard the engineer already representing the church saying it will be designed in that fashion so it doesn't disturb the neighbours.
Councillor
Henry. Councillor Henry,
thank you. This question is for the elder of the church. I've been pastor, sorry. I've noticed that on the website for all the churches, your service ends at 9:30. So I'm just wondering whether or not, or why is it that you're asking for extension at this new building and not within the other churches?
Sorry, but Neil can't answer that question, but it would be a question to be able to. Sorry, we've stopped the questioning with the public.
We're simplifying this down to we're expected to give a judgment on the extra half an hour plus the extra 10 days. Is that correct?
Yes, as I said in my introduction, there was an opportunity.
I'm just clarifying that because we're not agreeing either for the Elam Church, would it not been for my benefit if nobody else's, some guidance from them on what they, or all the officers have asked, what they want those extra days for, and what they were going to do before we make a judgment.
Yes, if you turn to page 111 in the report at the bottom, you've got paragraph 3.3, and the bullet points there sets out exactly what they're requesting the extra 10 occasions for. So you've got a New Year's Eve watch night service, worship and prayer, and there's an annual 2-day conference where meetings can run longer than 10:30 at night. Now, clearly, I don't think the church is saying they're going to be running all night on these occasions, it's just there might be some late occasions. There's a night of prayer, and there's Good Friday watch night service, and Christmas health, of course. And then there's a few additional events that aren't actually specified here, but the negotiation was 10 would be reasonable.
Can I answer the last question? In that case, do you not think they could have actually known this when they put the application in before?
Yes, and that's why the previous condition said not beyond those hours unless agreed otherwise with the local authority. So it's clearly all churches have events like that. And originally they would have had to apply every time to write in specifically. We would then say yes or no. I mean, it's Christmas carol service, we're unlikely to say no. I think everyone probably agrees to that. So we would then have to do that every single time. This is a mechanism whereby we get rid of that bureaucracy.
They would have known that when they put in their application for the whole business.
Yes, we did, and that's why that wording was used, because they knew they would have to apply for occasional events like this.
Any other questions? Councillor Megan.
Sorry. Having done some investigation on the website this morning, I noticed that the Elim Church in Mitcham are quite capable of working within the hours that have been specified here, that they've got already, and they haven't applied for any extra work. Are they any different to this organisation? Is the Wimbledon one different branch completely? I suspect not. And also, I know these are questions that I asked of officers as well, but unfortunately the officer I asked the officer, so he has to really find the answers to these.
Well, I can't really answer that question in terms of, no, I'm not an expert on churches, I don't know how one operates different from another, I'm sure there's specific reasons why they want to operate in a particular fashion, so I'm afraid I don't have any knowledge.
Councillor Craig.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to just ask a question to clarify the amendment schedule. On page 2 of the amendment schedule, it seems as if the Metropolitan Police are commenting along the lines that they had originally been concerned about the 10 o'clock closing affecting noise after 11. But now that the proposed hours are 10:30, they withdraw that concern, which does not strike me as tremendously logical, and I wonder if it's a misprint.
No, and I know the original concern was about the 11 o'clock final finish time, and now that's been reduced back to 10:30, therefore they feel it hasn't got into the sort of 11 o'clock, past the 11 o'clock night sort of, pub zone, shall we say, so therefore the 10:30 is acceptable, so it's come back half an hour. From the originally when it came in, it was 11 o'clock closing, and now it's 10:30, and they've changed the view because it came back half an hour.
It's the permission was granted for 10, so what we're considering this evening is an increase from 10 to 10:30, not a reduction from 11 to 10:30.
Sorry, to be clear, when this application first came in, they were requesting 11 o'clock. During the process of the application, and the Metropolitan Police commented on the 11 o'clock, saying they had concerns, the applicant then reduced it down to 10:30, and now we have this additional comment from Metropolitan Police, which and now they don't have the same concerns. That was all part of this application, not the previous one.
But then why is it an amendment tabled tonight?
So I think the original permission had that particular closing time. This application was for, originally when it was submitted, this particular one to amend the condition was till for an 11 o'clock closing. Do you understand that? And then the applicant has decided to reduce it to a 10:30 closing.
I do understand that there's reference to a previous application at 11 o'clock.
No, that was this application. This particular application for the amendment. It originally came in.
This is not an amendment. It's not an amendment to the current plan.
Well, it's just the terminology used for amendment to a condition.
The amendment to the current planning is not to 11 o'clock, so it's not an amendment to the current planning consent.
Yeah, it is. I'm afraid. If you look at the description of development, it's to amend the original planning consent to build the building, had that closing time of 10 o'clock. They then came in with this amendment application saying they close at 11. Negotiations continued. They said, well, we won't do that. And then as part of this application, we'll change what we're saying to 10:30. So it's an amendment to amendment.
Right. Well, Councillor Merton.
Just clarify that. So at the moment, what we're actually discussing is we're discussing a planning application that has been granted till 10 o'clock. And the church want an extra half hour, which is what's on the document in front of us.
Right.
Right.
Any more questions? Right, comments, please. No, I think I said Councillor Larry.
Sorry,
I'll take a minute.
Sorry. I just think there are a lot of assumptions within the application which rely quite heavily on policing. Based on this application, we have to assume that all services will stop by 10 p.m. We have to assume that the administrative activities will only have maximum 15 people. These administrative activities will be low light and also low noise if they're held at night. That only 10 events will be held per year. I don't think that's necessarily able to be policed, that the soundproofing will be adequate, and also that the congregation will disperse by 10:30. And while this wouldn't be so much of a concern if this was an area with a number of restaurants and other late night outlets, the surrounding area is very much a residential area, it's quiet, and it's also situated very close to private homes. So I don't think when the application is vague and is based so much on assumptions that really we can approve it at this stage.
I somehow get the feeling that the church has not really considered the effects of its operational hub on its neighbours. It doesn't matter how well you insulate buildings from noise, you can't stop noise getting out. Doors will be open from time to time, people will be milling about, people going out of some fresh air, and they're talking. Having conversations outside trips, of course, to neighbours. Car doors will be opened and slammed regularly. It doesn't matter how strict they are, they can't half allow to disperse. If the service finishes at 9, a full hour to leave the building. And I think we should stick to that 10 o'clock, which we have given them in the first application.
I went along to the current church and spent a couple of hours listening, and the noise was like a rock concert. It was very loud, extremely loud. And I can't believe, because there's nothing here which says they can't play music until 10:30. And I cannot believe that noise will be kept within the building, because not all of the building is sound deadened. The vestibule certainly isn't. And I don't think the arguments that a church, I mean specifically, I'm slightly paraphrasing, but I know that the church won't be able to conduct its services unless it's open to 10:30. That's what we were told tonight. Now, I don't read the Bible or anything too much, but I can't believe a church can't survive by opening to 10 o'clock at night. It's about 30 minutes train journey from Old Street, from Warren Street to South Wimbledon, and everyone seemed to get here at 7:15 tonight, so there's a lot of holes in this presentation. I think the other thing is, that's really, really concerning to me, and I heard it for the first time tonight, that this church has partner churches, which is absolutely no way they're going to control those people. There's no way they're going to be able to say that you have to turn off music, you have to leave quietly, you have to be out by this certain time. There is no control at all in any of this. And frankly, I think it's disappointing that this church has been able to get to 10 p.m. I think it needs to remember that its neighbours were there first and they should be respected. And I do hope that councils do reject it tonight.
Are there any other comments? Councillor
Thank you. I'd like to come back to these 10 extra days if we can. My view is quite clear. I think there's a sleight of hand here, because 1.3, for instance, this is a for instance, a night of prayer once a year, a small group from the church meet to pray through the night. Does that mean one of these extra will go through the night, or are they extending it from 10 to 10:30? Because 10:30 or 10 is hardly through the night. They could do it any night.
Okay, so we
That was the
yeah,
statement.
okay.
We pass the question to one comment.
Yeah. I'm getting the feeling we should move to the vote. So I'm going to put the recommendation to you, and that is to grant the variation of condition. Can I see those in favour, please? Those against? I think it's unanimous. And the application is reviewed.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, we will need some reasons to refuse the application. I don't know if anyone has some general policies in terms of DM-EP2, that's relevant in terms of noise to neighbours, and obviously DM-D2 in terms of amenity. So we can articulate some reasons for refusal if necessary on those particular grounds. But in terms of I presume it's disturbance to neighbours, any other issues that...
Well, quite simply, their argument does not hold water. That they are a church that's open 15 hours a day and they want to go beyond that. And they have not made a single case, not one sentence, that says they should have this planning application through. There is no case to answer.
Can I just suggest I can't really use that as a reason for refusal?
Can you use this? On page 417, you said, look at our policy 216 policies. 3.1, ensuring equal chances for all. Doesn't that include residents? As well as...
Yes, we can use that policy.
Have I concluded with that? Thank you very much. We now move on to 14 Highbury Road.
Remember, this application site is located on the southern side of Highbury Road in the village. The site comprises a large attached dwelling with front driveway and rear garden. The site has a sloping gradient down from the north to south, with the rear garden set. The site surroundings comprise a mixture of residential plots and the site lies within the North Conservation Area. The application itself is for proposed extensions and alterations to the existing dwelling, comprising a single story rear extension, replacement of rear door window with 2 new door windows, replacement front garage doors with windows, extending existing first and rear balcony,
and extension of proposed basement underneath Partner Garden and single-story extension. The proposed basement will comprise swimming pool, cinema room and other facilities, including 2 partner rooms. It will extend partly under the garden and will have a light well at the very end with external steps down. The ground floor site plan here shows a single-story extension along the paved and relaying the garden surface. So just confirm there's a single-story extension, it's just a section here, this is the ground floor plan, this is the proposed basement plan. A landscaping condition has been imposed to ensure suitable soft planting is provided, and the former garage at the front will be converted to the utility room. Turning to some of the proposed plans, so looking at the proposed first floor and second floor plans. Proposed first floor, this is the proposed balcony over here. Replacement of all the windows at the back as well, up here. You can just see the roof here of the single-story rear extension. Turning proposed front and rear elevations, so at the front, the garage is currently here, so that will be converted for replacement of windows. At the back, there's the 2 new dormers, balcony here, and the single-story rear extension here. You can just see the section through with the steps down the back to the basement. Turning to proposed side elevations, you'll note in the report that there was a previous appeal decision. So that proposal had an extension at a single story much further deeper than what's currently proposed. And there's a section drawing here showing the proposed basement at the rear of the property. Steps down, so there's steps at the back. Members, this is the proposed drainage plan that they've submitted to the application. So at the front of the property, under the driveway, would be a holding storage water facility to hold water and discharge to the public sewers at a controlled rate. In terms of trees, there is 1 tree to be removed at the rear of the property, which is here. Garden is largely laid on with some raised flower beds down the middle. Members, this is the previous scheme, so you'll see in the report that we attached to the appeal decision of the previous scheme. So this came before planning committee summer last year. It was refused and went to appeal, and the appeal report was in the Austin report tonight. The proposed basement has been slightly reduced in size compared to the previous one considered at appeal, in the sense that this corner here has been reduced. The swimming pool itself is at the same size. And you'll see the proposed ground floor plan of the previous scheme. That was the proposed ground floor rear extension, which you'll note the inspector objected to in his report. That has now been much reduced. And that's just for interest showing you the previous proposed rear extension to assist with you in this evening. In terms of site pictures, so that's the front, the garage there on the left to be converted. That's looking east at the back, looking down the garden. Again, looking east, you can just see the neighbouring property here to the right. So a single story extension is coming up here. Looking the other way, to the left. Looking at the back of the house. You'll see earlier I stated that it is slightly stepped down at the back of the garden as the site goes down. And there's a view from the front as well. For some members' attention to the modification sheet, you will notice some additional comments from the planning agent and officer's response to that, and also on further district representation. Now, overall, members, officers consider that the proposed works can be accommodated on site without causing harm to any community, the conservation of the local listed building. Appropriate conditions are recommended to ensure that appropriate drainage and construction methods are employed for the basement element of the scheme. Officers are therefore satisfied that the proposal has overcome the previous reason for refusal and the appeal decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sarah Capilla, please.
I will speak first. Susan Cusack.
Okay.
My name is Susan Cusack and I'm the Chair and Planning Secretary for the Belvedere Estates Residents Association. I'm speaking in opposition to this application on behalf of Vera and two immediate neighbours, Teresa Weir and David Bain, whose properties adjoin that of the applicants. We're here 1 year on when this exact same basement application was put to the PAC and refused, as the size of the proposed basement is disproportionate to the size of the house. The proposal represents overdevelopment in the conservation area, and the size of the proposed basement is too large and unneighbourly. This same proposal is still contrary to all the policies that rendered it against planning guidelines in the first place, namely DMD2, DMD3 and DMD4 of the 2014 local plan, Policy CS14 of the 2011 core strategy, and Policies 7.4 and 7.8 of the London plan. Nothing has changed in terms of the scale, size and impact of this application over the past year, but on the contrary, as further details have emerged, it's become even clearer that the PAC was entirely correct in its decision last year. This is a truly ginormous commercial-scale underground complex, which the applicant's own most recent basement construction method statement, produced last month, puts at 500 square metres, vastly bigger than was previously considered and rejected by this committee. This 500 square metres would mean that it does not comply with the requirement for basements to be less than 50% of the garden, and so this should be immediately rejected on those grounds alone. This is a massive and thoroughly ungreen project, which is equivalent in size to have a large 7-bedroom house with a swimming pool underground. The planning inspectorate's appeal decision, in which Mr Mayle also rejected this application, incorrectly states that the size of the basement was reduced to address the concerns of the neighbours, the Wimbledon Society and Vera. However, there's actually been no reduction in the size of the underground leisure and swimming pool complex, and you will have seen the multitude of further objections from all neighbours, the Wimbledon Society and Vera. This is a massively ungreen application at a time when climate change is at the forefront of people's minds. Pumping thousands of tonnes of cement into the ground to create a huge underground dam, annihilating everything in this large and lovely garden, is utterly horrendous, not to mention the amount of water and energy required to fill and heat the swimming pool. This is selfish in the extreme and totally unnecessary in a family home. Merton's own tagline is moving forward. However, to pass such an application would be a thoroughly retrograde step for the borough. The officer's report does not address any of the reasons given previously by the PAC for rejection. In fact, how could he? This is a dangerous application, firstly in the precedent that it would set, and also in the light of the large number of underground streams in this area. You will all have received an email detailing the facts and giving you yet another reason to reject this application. No list of conditions can offset the devastating effects of water and gravity in an unstable area. The committee should not be tempted to change its views and ignore the numerous objections because of one incorrect line in the inspector's decision, who also rejected the application. So please reject this application again. Thank you.
Sarah?
Thank you. Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sarah Capilla. I live with my family immediately next door at number 16 Highbury Road. I opposed this same application a year ago in this chamber, and I oppose it again. I agree in full with the points raised by my fellow speaker Susan Cusack. I would now like to draw your attention to the environmental, flooding and construction risks which the applicant's own advisors have since identified in their construction statement. This warns this vast excavation will create so much wastewater it may need to be taken away in a tanker. Special consents will be required to handle the trade effluent into the foul sewer drainage system, and the excavation will potentially fill to 1.5 metres of water for the 500 square metre basement. The report also states that ground conditions may be unstable during excavation. We live within a couple of metres and are terrified of this. The Wimbledon Society has objected strongly to this application. They state this basement will act as a dam, rerouting almost 2,000 cubic metres of free draining material around a concrete box, resulting in likely flooding of adjacent properties. This is clearly contrary to Local Plan DMD2, which states that the council will only permit developments that do not cause harm to the built and natural environment and local amenity and do not result in flooding or ground instability. Even the council's flood risk manager has concerns. I quote from his report, "There is very little natural ground left in which surface water may infiltrate, which is a requirement of DMD2, and there is a lack of detail provided to demonstrate how runoff will be reduced via sustainable drainage systems. This is in an officially recognised flood risk area already noted for high groundwater levels." It's clear from the applicant's own construction statement that the enormous size of this project significantly adds to the flooding and construction risks. DMD2 is clear that planning should not be granted in these circumstances. These considerable risks cannot be deferred to the construction phase, nor be dealt with adequately by conditions. The damage to our local environment will also be considerable. Numerous trees and planting will be destroyed by the works. A magnificent mature magnolia tree is scheduled for removal, and many others in ours and neighbouring gardens where the pine will go directly through their roots. No ecological appraisal has been carried out contrary to CS13. Also, the vast environmental impact of the noise and vibration of a commercial-sized 25-metre subterranean pool, gym and leisure facility with attendant air conditioning and plant equipment on a quiet conservation area. We completely understand our neighbours wish to renovate and redevelop their home. However, this is an entirely inappropriate proposal on a commercial scale, which will cause irreparable harm to us as neighbours and to our local environment. Thankfully, this was recognised a year ago, and there is no reason at all to reach a different conclusion. I urge you to refuse this application. Thank you.
David.
Thank you, Chair. My name is David Graham. I'm here today to speak as the agent. The applicant is also here to address the members. The application not only relates to the basement and single-storey extension, but also the restoration of this locally listed building, including removal of extensions and large dormer windows. As members are aware, a large scheme came before them in June last year and was considered. The proposal resulted in overdevelopment, disproportionate to the size of the site, and visually harmful to the conservation area. The scheme went to appeal, and in deciding the appeal, the inspector concluded, paragraph 12, that the combined effect of the overall scheme would not be harmful to the character and appearance of the conservation area. His concerns related to the impact of the ground floor rear extension on 16 Highbury Road. Importantly, as with all planning decisions, appeal decisions are based on adopted planning policies, and whilst the basement formed a major part of the appeal scheme, and with all the information in front of him, the inspector did not dismiss the appeal due to the basement, but instead the ground floor rear extension, which is now reduced in size. Notwithstanding this, the basement has been reduced in size from that was presented to the last committee, and also the appeal scheme, down to 39%, which is 340 square metres. I don't recognise the 500 square metres which has been said tonight. The policy requires basements do not exceed 50% of the garden area. We're therefore clearly within the policy parameters. The application has been accompanied by the necessary reports, and members will note in the officer's report that's been supported by a conservation officer, a tree officer, structural engineer, and flood risk manager. As is normally the case, any planning permission would be subject to conditions. Notwithstanding the reports already prepared and reviewed, draft conditions 12 and 13 require a basement construction method statement and hydrology report. Conditions 15 and 16 require foul surface water drainage. With a third of properties in Highbury Road having basements, they are not uncommon. By way of an example, the neighbour at number 16 has constructed a large basement. In that case, there were no conditions relating to basement reports, as there are proposed in the application before you tonight. This demonstrates that even without detailed reports accompanying applications for detailed conditions, basements can be completed successfully without any impact on neighbours. We're not aware of any issues in Merton where basements have caused flooding or structural movement. These details are dealt with through the building control team and building regulations. As with the previous application, the application was supported by a flood risk assessment, which confirms the areas identified by the Environment Agency as low risk in terms of flooding. flood risk assessment is clear, paragraph 7.6, that the proposed development does not increase the risk of flooding to the surrounding area. This has been reviewed and commented by a flood risk manager who confirms there should be no adverse effects on neighbouring properties. As confirmed in the application, Thames Water have accepted that any wastewater can be discharged into the foul sewage drains. It's not proposed to take water away by tanker, as is clear in paragraph 4.1 of the method statement. This was only identified as one of several initial options. At the previous committee, members had questions regarding construction and also flooding. It was confirmed by officers that no development would take place until further details were required to be submitted and reviewed by the flood risk engineer, as is the case tonight. Only one tree will be affected in the site. That's the magnolia tree in the applicant's gardens, and it's proposed to remove a cypress hedge, which is blocking light out to one of the neighbouring properties. The basement would be set within the boundaries of the site, which would mean that all trees along the boundary are retained. Given the reduction in scale of the ground floor extension and the size of the basement from that which was considered acceptable by the planning inspector, and the fact that council officers have reviewed the information and considered the proposals acceptable, we urge members to accept the recommendation.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
We still have time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the owner of 14 Highbury Road. The 2016 Olympics in Rio may have gone unnoticed for some of you. However, in my house, my son, aged 6 at the time, insisted in staying up to watch his hero, Adam Peaty. The previous year, we attended the British trials and watched as Adam Peaty broke the world record for the 100 breaststroke by half a second. From that moment, my son, who is very good breaststroke swimmer himself, fell in love with the sport. He insisted in staying up to watch the Rio Games, where Adam Peaty broke the 100 meters breaststroke twice. This has inspired my son to work even harder on his swimming, and as a mother, I want to do all I can to support him. Like any mother, I'm forever taking him to lessons every day and performed incredibly well since the age of 5, winning pre-prep and prep awards for the son. Since the age of 5, winning pre-prep and prep awards for the school and his swimming club, and his coaches say he's got a lot of serious potential. Unfortunately, the swimming pools don't open before school, thus he has only practiced after school. We want to help him to get to the next level. I would really appreciate it if you pass the plan given we have reduced it from the previous scheme. This would allow my son to train twice a day, once in the morning before school and after school, so that we might have another Adam Peaty on our hands. And for that, I need your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the CIS, I'll come on some of those points. The previous application, so yes, that did come before you, was rejected and then obviously went to appeal. So you have the appeal report there appended to you. You'll note that the inspector, in paragraph 9, you only refer to the basement essentially in that paragraph. Gives it a rather short sentence. What we have done with the resubmission of this application is we are required to reassess the proposal, which is what we've done. So you'll see in the report we have gone back to our experts to reassess the scheme and to review that it is acceptable from that point of view. So that's in regard obviously to the basement. You'll note in his conclusion as well, he did dismiss it on the impact of the single-storey re-extension. That has been much reduced, as I showed you earlier. Dimensions, I believe it was between 5 and 6 metres deep before. The current scheme will only be 1.8 metres in depth, so there has been a reduction in the size of the basement, only slightly, since the previous scheme, from 42% to 39%. And so, yeah, overall, hope that assists in discussion this evening.
Councillor Drew.
Thank you so much. Yes. Well, good evening, and thank you, Chair, thank you, Committee. I was elected just over a year ago to represent the residents of Village Ward, and my first duty in that capacity was to attend this very committee, possibly on this very evening a year ago, and to speak regarding this application. And I say this application because it is by any material measure unchanged, giving rise to the same objections from the affected residents. On that earlier occasion, the planning officers were also minded to approve, and on that occasion I spoke on behalf of due process, that the residents' well-articulated and reasoned objections be shown due respect and be given due and proper consideration. On that occasion, the committee took into account all the evidence and reasoning and voted to refuse this application. Now, I can well recall the almost stunned silence that greeted this decision. Inviting a retort from one of the committee, here tonight, I noticed, that its role was not to simply rubber stamp the planning officer's recommendations. Tonight, the application reappears, materially unchanged, and triggering the same objections with which the committee concurred last year. The application has since been turned down on appeal, and it is re-presented here, somehow in the hope that a different answer will be given. Now, the membership of this committee may have altered slightly, but the substantive facts regarding this application have not. And I must therefore respectfully urge that this committee stands firm, stands by the correct decision it took last year to refuse this application. Thank you.
Wrong questions. Councillor Mackin.
The officers, and it's not just this application, there's a few more in here as well. We've got a statement on one of them that says the inspector's report is a lawful planning permission. If we have decided, if we know residents and planning officers have pointed out that there are inconsistencies in this report, can we challenge it? And why haven't we?
Are you talking about the actual appeal decision?
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about subjective issues potentially, say there's inaccuracies, but obviously the inspector came to a conclusion based on the evidence before the inspector. And we can challenge decisions, but it's a subjective issue, it's a view from the inspector, it has to be factually incorrect.
There's one application in here that where planning officers have actually said that the decision was inconsistent. I can tell you, we've got page 12. What's on this application? It's on another one.
I think you're talking about a different application. I think it's important that we stick with this particular application discussion. I'm happy to have some points on this.
The only reason I'm pointing this out for this one is that if it's determined that this one, that the planning officers have decided that the application was basically incorrect, or the decision was incorrect because they looked at wrong issues in some ways, how can we guarantee that that's not happened in this case? For example, reading the application that we're looking at now, the biggest issue as far as I was concerned was the detrimental flood risks for the local people around that. That, according to the planning officer, the planning inspector, wasn't really looked at all. It just brushed it off in some ways. But it seemed to be, from all the contacts we were getting from residents, members of this committee, that was one of the integral opposition to it in some ways.
Yes, and that would have all been in front of the inspector. All the information provided to the inspector in relation to the appeal, in terms of the applications being appealed against, the inspector would have taken that all on board and has come to a particular conclusion. You may not agree with that conclusion, you may disagree, which is quite entitled to, but from our perspective, we have to take that as a material and a significant material consideration.
So that actually means that we can't really look at the basement, basically, because it's not really mentioned in the report, therefore the assumption is that it's been accepted.
If I can be clear, I mean, inspectors are human. I mean, there has been in my too many years now career occasions when I think it's probably been agreed the inspector got it wrong. All I can say is that we have to take that as a serious material consideration, but you are perfectly entitled to come to a contrary view. All we would say is that there is, as part of this application, relevant evidence has been provided in terms of the reports, the expert reports, the responses from our officers are quite satisfied that what is being proposed is acceptable, and it does actually comply with policy as well. But again, that's in your gift whether you wish to disagree with that.
Statement to start with, to be clear, the appeal was dismissed, rejected. So don't take the appeal as being acceptable. It was dismissed, rejected. Let's be clear. My point is this a flood risk area, as the objector said?
No, it's not. It's flood zone.
It's groundwater. It is a flood risk area for groundwater, sorry. Absolutely is.
Can I just say, I know you might be upset and angry, but we're not allowed to take any interventions from the public, sorry.
Well, we know it's a flood zone 1, which is effectively no significant risk. In terms of groundwater, well, I mean, to a certain extent, everywhere's a risk of that these days with the amount of rainfall we get. But there's nothing actually in the report that can tell me one way or the other at this moment in time. We'll keep on searching to see if we can find it, but it's not there.
There's a problem with flooding here. The Wimbledon Estate Residents Association, how would you respond to their comment that the application site is classified as vulnerable as it is located within flood zone 1, that's on page 71? How will you respond to this?
Are you in the appeal decision at the moment?
So, I think, I see the bullet point referring to within the association response. Well, flood zone 1 essentially is every area outside of flood zones 2 and 3. So flood zone 1 is an area where development is acceptable in principle. So it's not a high flood risk area.
That's okay. We have to my interest also.
Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wanting to get some clarification about this basement size, because I understand it's 39% of the garden. But looking at the diagrams on the screen there, that looks a lot bigger than the 39% of the garden. Is there some scale issue?
We have checked this. So calculations to take for looking at that beyond the rear, in the rear garden, for example. So it does include the land, so beyond the rear elevation of the property, but also land down the sides, and obviously the front and back here. So although it obviously looks, it's a big basement, but it obviously looks large, but it is less than 50%.
A supplementary on this thing. On policy DMD2B4, it says basements should not exceed 50% of either the front, rear or side garden. So okay, it doesn't exceed 50% of the rear garden, but it exceeds 50% of the front garden, surely. The whole purpose of this policy must be to ensure that the basement does not exceed the total garden space, or 50% of it.
I think we talked about when it says either, you're looking at 50% of the front area if it was basement. If that was exceeded, that would be unacceptable. If it was 50% of the rear garden, that went over that, that would be unacceptable as well. So you're looking at these things isolated. That's why I use the word either. So you're defining what the space is before you then do the assessment. That's where I agree. When you said it, actually, I did have to rethink a second because it does sound a little bit different, but that's the way I've always read it, and I think that's probably the way everyone's read it, actually.
And then a third, final question, if I may.
You may find another one.
The reduction from 42% to 39%, are we to consider that to be a material change, or is that an immaterial change, please?
I mean, I'd say, yeah, it's a small change, but I'd say it is a material change. It's part of this application, so yeah, small change, but material in the assessment.
How long is the garden and how long is the basement?
The basement itself is on the report, so it's 30 metres in length. That's taken from the back here to the very end. The length of the garden, I can get that, Chair. I'll just have to get that plan. It's a bit of a second.
I just confirm if this is about the size again, whether the percentage is correct. I was only saying that because even in the office this went around quite a number of times, because no one quite believed it when they saw it until they actually measured the number of times.
That's a preconditional question like that, you don't need. I'm just interested.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to support Councillor Crowley because I was going to ask this question about the decrease on the original application to the ones recommended here. When you look at the amount, it's only 15 square metres in an overall size of what would originally have been, 375. I would suggest when officers looked at that, I can't believe from my experience that you considered that adequate.
Can I respond to that point, Chair?
Yeah.
The point is, no matter which figure you put those two figures you look at, they're still above policy compliant. Well, the change is only minor. No matter which figure you look at there, both are policy compliant. In other words, they're both under 50% of the rear guard. So in terms of purely policy basis and what's in the local plan, it does comply.
Any more questions? Yeah, absolutely.
So the oblong we see there, that's the actual space in the basement. So without any knowledge at all, I'm assuming the pilings are additional to this. So there is another further metre around what we see there.
Depends on the technique. Pilings aren't quite as big as you think. They only tend to be about that size. So what you're seeing, the red line there, is probably about that size. I'm guessing here. It's probably maybe slightly bigger, but it's maybe slightly beyond that boundary. It's difficult to tell on a scale this size, so I can't really answer that accurately, but they're not necessarily as large as you think they might be.
And so, what is the width between next door's fence and the current basin, the red line we've got? So, without piling.
The width is 2.6 metres measured on plan. The depth of the garden, you earlier queries, 41 metres.
I don't buy this. 30 metres, that's bigger than Wimbledon public swimming pool, I believe. I think that's 25. Just Google mapping that because I couldn't get to see the garden. This is over 75% of the length. 75% of the length. In terms of the tonnage of water, considering we're on a hill here, it's quite incredible if anything went wrong. And anybody going past a swimming pool will get that incredible smell of chlorine when they go past. The neighbours are going to have chlorine on their doorstep. They're going to have pilings on their boundary. They're going to have a beautiful garden just smashed to pieces for it's just unbelievable the size of this. And I think it's very selfish that we have to think about the environment. This is everything against the environment. Even though it's seen as being underground, this is bulk and massive. And this is unacceptable. It's not right for the community, it's not right for the town, it's not right for the hill, it's not right for the environment. And if somebody wants to go swimming, I would suggest they go to the swimming pool in Wimbledon. And we have to, in a conservation area, conserve what is already there. And I agree with what Councillor Howard said. The appeal was dismissed. It wasn't accepted, it was dismissed. And nothing has changed except for a couple of centimetres. This is gross, it's 75% of the length of this. This has to be rejected in my opinion.
I'd like to comment, if you don't mind, because for me, there's a dilemma here really, in that our original reason for turning it down was the excessive bulk mass and depth of both the basement and the single-storey rear extension. But it went to the inspector, and there was no reference, really, apart from that one small sentence about the pool, and the extension has been moved back. So the area that the inspector was concerned about has been changed and would satisfy now. So my concern is, if we were going to go back and refuse it on bulk and mass over the swimming pool, which the inspector felt was not an issue, we have a problem. We have a problem because on what grounds, what do we say, the inspector's wrong at that point? How does it work? I don't know.
Chair, he didn't say that. He didn't mention it.
He doesn't mention it?
He doesn't mention it because that's an issue. No, let's be clear on this. He did not say, I accept the swimming pool. Ergo, he does not. What he said is, we rejected it, and he's accepted the rejection. He hasn't said,
I don't think that's right.
As he said, he's happy with the basement. Ergo, we rejected it, and he accepted our position. He has not, has he specified, I accept the size, bulk, massing of the pool. He has not said that. There is not a sentence that says that.
Can I just be clear? It was part of the proposal. If he didn't find it acceptable, then he would have refused the application on that basis. That's my interpretation. And we have to, as professional planning officers, interpret it that way. I fully appreciate you may have your own interpretation.
No, I'm sorry. He did not. We rejected the basement. He did not say, contrary to your rejection, I disagree. I.e., he was accepting our position. That's how the world works. If somebody does not commit to say the opposite, they are agreeing with you. He has agreed with us. I don't accept. There is not a single sentence in that appeal which says he was.
Okay, I think we've got your message.
If I can just to be clear that particular point up in the conclusion, paragraph 8 of the appeal statement, and the inspector says, I have found above that the combined effect of the overall scheme would not be harmful to the character and appearance of the host building or that of the Merton, Wimbledon North Conservation Area. Nevertheless, my concerns as to the impact of the proposed ground floor extension on living conditions of existing future occupiers at 16 Highbury Road are paramount. So the combined effect of the overall scheme was taken into consideration.
Others in the room here may feel, that it is bulk and mass in terms of the pool. But we've also got to consider what's going to come within planning guidance here before we make a decision. Can we take other comments, please? Councillor?
I think that the inspector really didn't see any need to comment on the swimming pool, but we can comment on it. I think what the applicant is asking us to do is prove an Olympic-sized swimming pool in a back garden so that our son can become a winner of the Olympics. I hope I will be around to cheer him on the sidelines when he's winning his race. But I do think that this swimming pool here and the flooding that it can cause the area, and I'm sure the neighbours are pretty upset. And I would be upset too if I was with him. But of course, since the inspector didn't comment on this particularly, I don't think we have any reason to hope to turn it up.
I just want to pick up on what Councillor Raynes said. I think policy, where is it now? DND2A 14, it talks about ensure that sustainable design to make effective use and minimise water use. Now, I can't see that private residents, the proposal to build a 25-metre swimming pool can in any way fit under this policy of minimising water use. It's an excessive use of water. Nobody in a private residence needs a 25-metre pool. That's the size of the pool in Merton Park. I mean, I think it's just totally fails this policy, DND2 A14.
So just to pick up a point on that specific issue in terms of swimming pools, in terms of the initial filling of the pool, obviously, yes, it's quite a lot of water. It's quite a narrow pool, actually. It's the idea it's an up and down pool. And once it's full, it wouldn't be refilled as such. The water is used and stays in the swimming pool for quite a considerable period of time. It's very rarely emptied. Public pools, they are. Private pools aren't. They don't tend to be empty. They tend to be remain quite static.
I know that private pools are filled with people as they have pools. I've seen them. I know specific pools that they do. They do.
You top them up again.
No, well, that's a very thing. They are changed. They are consistently changed. They really are. One of the issues I have here, there are a number of swimming pools in this borough which are derelict. There's one at Wimbledon Chase School. And being a local councillor, I said, why don't you just get rid of it? They said, you will not believe how difficult it is once you build a swimming pool to get rid of it. You can't. And this garden will be destroyed. The sheer cost of putting this in, of maintaining it, the next owner may not want it. And it's never going to go away. It's never going to be grass again. This pool will be there forever as long as the house is there. And we've got to think about the environment, not just today, but we've got to think about where we're going to be in 50 years' time. And this is the worst thing for the environment we'll ever have. There's no good coming out of this. And I do not accept, and I'm sorry to go on about this, I am sorry, the appeal was dismissed, and it was not positive. And we must not be worried of losing an appeal. We have to read what we see in front of us. And if any of us think we should pass this, do so. I believe that none of us really want to pass this, and we should reject it.
Are there any more comments?
Chair, my main concern is the flooding. And of course, also the neighbours, as the concern, there's a lot of water. And at the end of the day, we have to consider the neighbours, the people who live next door. And not only, as our colleague says, not for now, maybe for years to come, what will happen, what the outcome will be. So these are some of the things we need to look at.
Thank you, Chair. I think I agree with your earlier sentiments. I think we're all uncomfortable with the size of the swimming pool, but when it comes to being policy compliant, I think this is. If we look at DND2, the two main points are that it's less than 50% of the garden and that it has with 1 metre of permeable soil. It has both of those things. And while we're sort of unhappy with the size of it, given the size of the garden, fundamentally it is policy compliant. And while it was dismissed on appeal, it was very clear in conclusion that it was not dismissed on the grounds of the swimming pool.
I'm going to have to put this to the vote, I think. So, we look at the recommendation. To grant permission subject to conditions. Those in favour, please show. Those against? Okay, now you have to have a reason on this. I'm sure residents.
Two reasons come from the last report that we did last year. The size of the proposed basement is just perfect to size that. That's also changed. The proposal represents open development is observation. And the other one was the size of the proposed basement is too large to be used on the neighbour. But that's the same as the first. So those two.
Yes, I mean, in terms of if you want to use that reason, it's the same as the last time, but obviously we can't use the road extension because clearly that's no longer there to the same extent. So it would be the similar lines in terms of the basement.
I'm also concerned about the flooding, the liability to create floodplains.
Well, again, we've had professional input on that. We've got the reports part of the application. The inspector didn't raise that as an issue. If it was to be appealed, then we'd have to investigate all those aspects, and with the expense of the reports from our side and the applicants, and the risk of costs, as already mentioned, that would be exacerbated.
Then the application recommendation is not successful.
Sorry, can we add the minimum? Doesn't minimise water use. So, can we use the policy about minimising water use as part of the grounds for rejecting?
In my view, I don't think so. In terms of how people lead their lives, it's quite a lot of, as I said, water in the pool initially. It's a topping up process after that. So in terms of the continual use of the pool, it's not going to use a significant amount of water necessarily.
Well, there we are. We now move on to agenda item 12, which is the Old Rutlandsians Association Sports Ground.
Very sorry, I didn't realise that my son is a member here, so I transact with these people, so I mustn't just take part in this.
Okay. Are you a member of the club? No. I think you're a member of the club. You're not a cricket fan.
Okay, as you can see from the papers, the application is for the installation of new cricket nets to replace existing ones in the new location, the erection of a new storage shed, and the erection of mesh wire fencing along the western and eastern boundaries to a height of 1.8 metres. I'll just quickly take you through some photographs of the area. The nets have been erected, and so you can actually see them through the photographs, and you'll see them from this particular view. A little bit closer, this is the end of the close. If I can just draw attention to the neighbours' houses, that you'd see the projections to the application. Obviously you have one neighbour here, that's the proximity to the nets, and the other side of the cul-de-sac, obviously there's other residential properties there. Just on that photograph, you've also seen some of the correspondence about this extra netting that's been put in. Residents have taken exception to that because it's more visible on the actual nets itself. So I just thought I'd show you while we have that photograph. There's a few more coming up in a second of that. So here you can see the netting themselves. It's typical cricket netting for a tennis club. Sorry, a cricket club. Permission was granted for this. The nets themselves, it was in a slightly different location, 6 metres further north. This application pulls them 6 metres further south, and it also adds the storage and the mesh fencing around the site as well. Then again, you can see the height of the nets themselves, about 4 metres, and these are those barriers that are to stop one batsman being interfered by another in terms of vision when they're actually practicing the batting, or batting, quite right. So there you can see the extent of it, and again, at no proximity to the neighbouring properties. The nets themselves will come on to in a minute, were previously located up further north in this area of the development, close by but not in the exact same location. So again, small photographs there showing the proximity to the neighbouring properties. And in terms of the site plan, see the nets, that's the close there we were looking at. The nets themselves have been moved slightly further south. That's the extent of the net, so that's the previous, there was granted planning permission in 2018, and that's what proposed now, in other words, moving that 6 metres further south. So the attached proposal in terms of the net, of the additional storage container and the mesh wiring around the property. Just while I'm on the mesh fencing, officers obviously don't consider that significant in terms of its impact. It's see-through. It would blend quite nicely with the hedging that's already around the property, so it's not considered to be a significant issue. So you can see that fencing to the front, sort of east and the west of the site, and there's the storage shed, and the nets there. And just a few more representations of the nets themselves. You'll see in the documentation, residents have raised issues with the use of the nets, the noise, etc., and the timing of the nets. This is it's an existing sports use, so therefore there are no controls over the use of the site. The nets were there previously in a slightly different location. And there is also an issue raised with some mechanical bowling equipment. Now that's portable, they can bring it out, put it on the site and then put it away again. There's an issue, residents say there's a bit of noise associated with that. I'm sure they'll say it's more than a bit of noise. So as you see fencing there, so that's just some technical details of the fencing. That gives you an idea of the mesh fencing, so it's green, matches the hedging, you can see straight through it. I don't think we had a photograph originally, but we've got the fencing, sorry, the hedge there, so you would have your fencing alongside, one within the hedge in some fashion. The hedge would actually go through the fence. It's quite typical in parkland areas. As it's already been granted planning permission, and there's minor change plus the fencing and the storage is considered to be okay, it's appropriate in this particular designation for the site, sports use associated with the use, therefore it's considered to be acceptable. Thank you.
There is quite a bit in the modifications, so I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to have a look at that. Can I call on Arthur Sexton, please?
I'm a resident at 38 Charmwood Avenue, the property totally adjacent to this development. The proposed facility, as you have seen, has been completed, therefore these objections and comments are based upon fact as opposed to supposition. I made a submission on Monday with additional information, including pictures. Hopefully this has been reviewed. Firstly, the planning application form is incorrect and incomplete for whatever reason. Item 19, hours of opening, is given as not known, and also item 20, type of machinery installed, is stated as none. We believe the omission of the use of machinery and specified opening times for the facility has prevented the planning committee from making an informed appraisal of the application. We object on several grounds, specifically visual impact, but most importantly increased noise pollution. Contrary to the statement 7.15 in the agenda, the nets are not in a similar position. They've been totally repositioned so they are now fully adjacent and parallel to our property. The effect of this repositioning is they're now just 6.5 metres, 21 feet, from the whole length of our house. Before they were about 30 metres away at the closest point, so at 4 to 5 times closer. Being a new state-of-the-art facility, they're being used to a far greater extent than the previous nets and with machinery. The new nets are in use every night of the week, as you can see from Oldrush's website. In addition, when the football practice finishes, the nets continue to be used afterwards, typically to about 9:30 at night. Also, the club have planned and advertised summer camps in the school holidays for at least 3 weeks, running from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. These are in addition to the evening usage. Every weekend the nets are used daily, almost constantly, from 8:30 in the morning to approximately 9. We shouldn't have to endure being woken up at 8:30 every Sunday of the cricket season by use of the nets at the untimely hour. Even when not in use, these nets act as a magnet for any children in the field. It's totally unacceptable the current hours these nets are in use and the increased noise nuisance they've created. However, by far the most noise nuisance comes from the use of machinery that was not declared in the application. No machinery was used previously with the nets. The applicant clearly stated that there would be no machinery. Their answer to quote, none, this is a sports training facility. However, at the time of the application, the base for the facility had already been constructed and incorporated electrical supply. This supply is used to power mechanical bowling machines. These machines are very noisy and particularly intrusive. With just one machine in use, every room of our property, even with windows closed, can hear that use. We can only imagine what it would be with 4 in use and the windows need to remain open in the summer. So given the proximity to our property, hours of use of machinery, we object to the planning application. The facility has created a significantly increased noise nuisance to ourselves and our neighbours, who I also represent. It's impacting on our quality of life, our rights of quiet enjoyment, and no doubt the value of our property. We urge members to reject the application. We do not understand why it couldn't be positioned elsewhere in the site.
Thank you. Neil Robinson, please.
Hi, my name is Neil Robinson. I'm one of the volunteers that help support Rutlishians Association, which provide the local community of Merton access to the sporting facilities ever since actually Poplar Road's housing development started in the 1900s, and the club will be celebrating its centenary only next year. And we have about 1,000 people who play sport, not just cricket and rugby and football on that ground. The original planning application for the replacement of our previous cricket nets was actually granted back in October 2018. This revised planning application was being discussed today contains exactly the same size, colour and format as we previously was granted. The only differences that we see are that the nets have moved 6 metres away from Eridge Road to allow better economical use of the land. This move was discussed in consultation with the Planning Office in 2008 before we built them, and after a discussion with house number 29 Charnwood Avenue, as at the time we were told that was the only house that would be affected by the change in the movement. To date, we have not seen any complaints concerning the new position, and this planning application is to ensure planning approves and it comes in line with the original, the final build. To answer the other concerns about the nets which have arisen since the build and outside of the previous planning approval, as a club we recognise both through the letters received through the planning process or directly made to the club that the white batting curtains and early use in the day of the nets is a concern. The club has made the following changes. The white nets 2 metres high will be removed. New 1.5 metre black curtains, which are smaller, will be installed at the rear of the nets, and 1 2 metre black net between the batsmen only. This is both a reduction in height on the outside and a reduction of the amount of nets being used, plus a colour more sympathetic to the overall scheme as requested by residents. On our early morning use, it has surprised us at the club that so many people have entered so early. Sport at the weekends has always started at 9:30, both at Old Ruts and at the council pitches, with players often arriving and meeting at 9 a.m. So we have now instructed all players that there is to be no use of the nets before 9 a.m. New signs will be added to the nets themselves, emails have been sent out, and we've changed the policy on our own website. The second change to the original plan was the introduction of a shed, and I've seen no actual concerns with that at this point. And thirdly was the introduction of a fencing scheme around the ground to promote improved security. Now we, like many sports clubs, have to manage the continuous challenge of vandalism, and as we invest more in the club's facilities over time, we wish to improve our security. We have a well-established hedge, you saw it there. It varies in height from 1.3 to 3 metres in height. We want that hedge to grow, but in some cases that hedge has got serious damage, and we believe we should be doing a combination of fencing and hedge growth, and in the end the hedge will be the thing that dominates. Now, on the cricket machines, or the bowling machines, there's 2 of them at the nets. We have had cricket machines there for some time, so they have been used in the old nets. And I hope you can understand the changes that we're recommending. We recognise that within our financial setup, we will listen to neighbours and we will make changes accordingly, and we hope that you'll support the revised application that we previously were granted.
Thank
you. Just in terms of hours of use, like I mentioned in the introduction, I mean, there is no restriction on the hours of use of this sports facility. It's been there for a long time, so there's nothing we can propose in terms of that. The equipment, again, I would emphasise again, my understanding is that whilst there's an electricity supply there to be plugged into, it's pretty much free-wheeled out there, so it's not a permanent structure, therefore wouldn't require planning permission. You could put that kind of equipment anywhere around, there's absolutely nothing we can do about it, it doesn't require planning permission. Yeah, I think that's it. That's it, thanks.
Councillor May.
Was it considered to put it anywhere else on the site? Because it's quite a big site. It could have gone the other end of the ground near the clubhouse.
From my experience, sports clubs normally have a good reason for what they do. They look at alternatives. This is where the nets, it's reasonably close to where the nets were previously, except it's not the exact same position. There's rugby pitches, cricket pitches, etc. You normally have to put them in a particular position that doesn't interfere, and I think the rugby 5 metre zone runoff is relevant to that as well, and that's why where they are.
A question really about hours of use. Looking at that photograph on the screen, almost appears as some kind of floodlighting. I just wondered whether the facilities are used after dusk.
Yes, the photograph's a little bit deceptive. You'll see that they're actually pointing in towards the pitches. It's not for the netting. I did have a look at this myself to see if there was anything associated. If you look at the other photographs, it's a street lamp obviously, but you won't see any lighting within there. So it's clearly in terms of use, it's restricted by the amount of lighting. But again, you can't even see. That's the same end. You can't even see the lighting, which I presume is down here somewhere. So now there's the lighting there pointing towards the centre of the pitch, so clearly it's not going to benefit the nets in any particular fashion.
So what percent of the site can be used during the day?
Can't hear you.
The site can only be used when it's light.
Exactly.
Any other questions? No? Comments? No?
So I just asked, are we able to condition as to hours of use?
There's no such restrictions on the overall site, so I don't think there would be any particular reason for that. As you say, it's restricted in any event by light, so clearly in the winter it's very restricted. I wouldn't recommend that because, well, we have the website also, and the club you just heard, they put their own restrictions on the use as well. It's the standard weight clubs. I mean, I don't think you can get kids playing there at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, because they're not going to get up on time. So, in any event, you could have any sports being played in that particular location, whether it's rugby, football or anything, it could extend that far because it's a sports complex. So that could happen now without any restriction in any event. So there is no real way of restricting it.
Councillor.
I would just like to say, Chair, if I was living in that area, I would be certainly giving my time volunteering to support the school. I think, it's a good thing in protecting the children, in protecting the neighbours, and also, I don't see anything wrong with it.
Any other comments? I'm going to move to the vote. Okay. Those in favour, please show. It's unanimous. The application begins. item 5. This is 13 to 24 Alwyne Mansions. We don't have any speakers for any of the items that follow, but we do have 2 councillors present who will be speaking on the next 2 items, but we have no objectors and agents present to discuss this. We may have that agent present, but we don't have objectors for the agent to respond to. So 13 to 20. Yeah, you can go check councillor.
The application site is on the south side of Alwyne Road. It comprises a large block, a mansion block, you could call it, of residential flats. The proposal itself is for a various condition application, condition 2, of Planning Commission 2397. The Planning Commission was allowed on appeal, and the inspector's report has been appended to the committee report this evening. The original proposal, the original scheme was for roof extensions to create 4 2-bedroom flats. The proposed variation before you this evening is to increase the depth of the rear dormer windows by 0.51 metres towards the back. So that is the change for you to consider this evening with the proposal. Talking through the plans, so that's the existing front elevation here and existing rear. Existing side sections as well, and some 3D visuals. Proposed floor plans, so top floor within the roof space only, 4 2-bedroom flats. The extension to the depth of the dormer windows, which span the entire width of the building itself to help from the headroom of these 4 flats. The increase in depth is at the back here, as I said, by 0.51 metres. Looking to the elevation plans, so on the front, conservation roof lights installed within the roof, and on the back, the dormer windows. Turning to the side elevation, so here, the proposed side section, the dormer window. The original scheme, the dormer window stopped at 1,000 millimetres before the eaves. This one takes it to within 405 millimetres of the eaves. Turning to some site photographs at the back of the building itself. As I said, the dormers will be up here. And the front of the building just to look at the character of the building. Overall, members, the application is a bit acceptable, subject to conditions. An increase in depth of the dormer windows is not going to cause any material harm. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. I've been asked by residents of Alwyne Mansions, Alwyne Road and Compton Road to read out a statement on their behalf to object to this planning application. The main issue is the fact that the applicant is seeking to combine 2 plans which will result in a raised roof, larger properties, greater overlooking and a detrimental effect to the look and feel of the beautiful Victorian mansion blocks. We feel strongly that the combination of raising of the roof and the larger dormers creates excessive bulk and mass and creates dangerous precedents for our lovely residential roads and hillside. The fact that the applicant is cherry-picking aspects of both the approved plans to create something which probably would have been refused initially also sets a worrying precedent. Just because 2 separate and different plans were approved doesn't mean a combination of them should be. Plan should be viewed as a whole, and we think this newly created plan should be a separate planning application. Further, the inconsistencies between the inspector's appeal and the planning documents are concerning. It appears that the inspector approved the planning on the basis that the roof will not be raised and that the properties will have 1 bedroom each. With the new planning, the properties will be larger 2-bed flats and the roof will be raised. We don't think that the council can move forward with this until the inconsistencies are corrected. Finally, the larger properties compound all previous issues, such as the fact that there are inadequate rubbish facilities for current residents, let alone new ones, noise, reduction in amenity, less light, etc. The larger dormers also extend further out, which raises the issue of privacy again to Compton Road. And one of the residents emailed me at 7 o'clock tonight to say, referring to point 12 of the appeal document, it states the level of development proposed in both appeals will not result in a higher ridge line than the existing property. Therefore, the inspector does not consider that there will be a material loss of daylight. However, as this proposal being discussed does increase the height of the ridge line, and due to the squared off dormers to the rear, it will bring a ridge line a number of metres closer and higher to the properties on Compton Road, and there will be a loss of sunlight both due to the height increase and the closer proximity of this raised ridge line overlooking Compton. Clearly then the views of the appeal inspector and the document are not relevant to this proposal due to that increased height. Photographic evidence submitted during the appeal of sunset and sunlight over Alwyne Road looking towards Compton Road shows issues with this. The sunlight is already diminished due to the height of the flats. Adding another storey would make this even worse and affect the immunity of the residents on Compton Road. So residents are asking if you refuse this tonight on those grounds. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Can I confirm that essentially this application is identical to 17P2396, which has already been approved other than the size of the bedrooms? In all other aspects, it's exactly the same.
Thank you. Yes, so 17P2396 was for 4 1-bedroom flats. The flats under Scheme 1, the dormer windows were in the same position in depth as what's been proposed this evening. So yeah, in terms of the outlook at the back, it's identical.
So just to add that the only point of contention here in this particular application is around the depth of the dormers, but actually in a previous application we've already approved the depth of the dormers for a different set of buildings, so actually there's not very much difference between the two.
So on the Scheme 1, the depth of the dormers were identical to this, but they weren't raising the ridge height, whereas Scheme 2 was raising the ridge height, but the depth of the dormers were reduced. So the current proposal before you is to extend the dormers of 0.41 metres further deeper under Scheme 2, which Scheme 2 also had the increase in ridge height.
We're talking about a very small difference here. Councillor Coe.
I just wanted to clarify, under the scheme that we are considering this evening, how much higher is the ridge height, please?
So the ridge height is actually the same as what was already approved at planning appeal under the inspector's report. It's just the depth of the dormers are going further back by 0.51 metres.
Half a metre. Depth is half a metre deep. There's no other questions. Any comments? Can we move to the vote then? Those in favour of this recommendation, please show. Sorry. Yeah. Those in favour, please show. Those against, not voting. Thank you. Then the recommendation is granted.
Can we just add to the condition on the bike sheds that room is left in the bike shed for trans and disability scooters? Because if you've got a baby living on 4th floor, you're going to have to keep walking them down.
I think that's something you should have raised as a question before you made a decision. Sorry, Councillor Maiden, but I think we've moved on. Okay, 5 Highbury Road. This is tree protection preservation order, isn't it?
That's right, yes. I haven't got a picture to show you of the actual tree itself, I'm afraid. I was looking for one today, but unfortunately the officer had left for the day. And the report makes it very clear that these particular trees are worthy of retention. The officer's been through the evidence that's been submitted. They have interrogated that evidence and come to the conclusion that it isn't substantial enough to warrant removal of the trees themselves. Therefore, members are asked to confirm the tree preservation order.
Councillor Thomas Barton.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the residents of... Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the residents of 5 Highbury Road to voice significant concerns about this order being confirmed. As the report states, following an officer site visit in January, a letter from the council in February to the residents said the removal of 2 of the 3 trees could not be justified. Following this, the residents were encouraged to seek expert opinion. They were not advised of the industry standard tests that are apparently required to assess structural damage in real terms, as referenced in the report. But that said, the residents have substantially funded and received a whole structural engineer's report which recommended the trees were removed, a surveyor's report which recommended the trees were removed, an arboriculturist's report which recommended the trees were removed, as well as a drainage report which referenced historic damage and recommended a drain was rebuilt due to roots intrusion. So you can see why the residents would be reluctant to put further money towards what would now be a 5th expert opinion. The fact we should be looking to not just protect but plant more trees on the grounds of beauty, landscape and environment is indisputable. But this has to come at a balance where there are impacts on quality of life and on property. Not least when the residents have been told and are satisfied with the recommendation that younger specimens located slightly differently should be planted. Trees that, for what it's worth, would have greater visual amenity to the road than the existing trees which often are little. The report seems to favour not acting now, tackling the root of the problem, if you will, but instead dealing with the damage caused once it has worsened. Drives and pavements increasingly lifted and cracked, external walls removed, repaired or replaced again, trees pruned, approval pending because they aren't a sufficient enough nuisance despite shadowing all day and in all seasons. Being about as far away from an expert as you can be on the subject, I can see the damage that could be done from public and private property, and I'm sure that others could too. This puts the residents in an unenviable position, told by numerous experts that these trees pose a risk, damaging their own property, that of their neighbours and the public, with a longer-term risk of further damage and potential subsidence, for all of which, unless the council wants to take responsibility, the residents are potentially liable, of which they will need to inform their insurance company. This seems highly undesirable for all concerned, so I'd ask members of the committee to look again at the detail of the case, to consider our responsibility to our residents and reflect that the order should not be confirmed. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, just briefly, I work very closely with the tree officers, and they don't take these issues lightly. We do allow for trees to be removed quite often, actually, more often than you might think, when there are absolutely displayed evidence of significant damage. In this particular case, I can't show the photographs. There is some slight issues, there's no doubt about that, but it's just felt that it isn't being demonstrated fully that the trees should be removed, considering the impact that they're actually having. I mean, the structural report that had it doesn't necessarily, just because there are minor cracks, doesn't mean to say that the actual trees are causing those particular issues. It's not been demonstrated absolutely that that's the case. If that information is submitted, I'm sure the officers would reassess and they would reconsider that. But at this moment in time, they're not satisfied themselves that they've actually gone far enough to demonstrate that.
Are there any questions? Comments? Yeah.
Would we've been asked to confirm the tree order. If we reject or not confirm, does that mean that the tree can be taken down without further reference to tree officers or other council officers?
Yes, that would be the impact, that would be the effect, yes.
Any other comments? Can we move to a recommendation, please? Those in favour of the tree preservation order being confirmed without modification and condition? Those against? Not voted. Then the recommendation is carried. I'm now proposing we take a short break. There are tea and coffee in the annex room.
Clinic, London Road, again back to the clinic. Just on the left-hand side here you can see fencing there, that's the neighbouring building. So that's the sort of sensitive side, I'll come on to in a minute. We have a real property along there, but we'll see how the applicants have managed to design the building so it doesn't impact significantly on that particular space. And also there is actually a walkway in between the properties as well. So in between that fence and that fence is probably about 1.5 metre, 2 metre walkway between the properties. So again, this building is set away from the neighbours. And that just shows a little bit more of the backland side there. Again, that's that trellis fencing so you can see where the neighbour is. And just circling around through the site. This is the other side, so the shops and the rear of the shops that you can see. There aren't any specific windows, or no residential windows anyway, so it's not quite as sensitive this particular side. There is a couple of office windows at the top level, but not residential. And again, that's more photographs of the side. That's the back end of the office building, so this will slot in this target area at the moment. Just go through, that's the existing site with the car parking in the rear, and this is what's being proposed, the units. It's a slightly unusual design, but it's intended to have sloping roofs on this side so as not to impact on the neighbouring residential property there, whereas on this side it's not as sensitive to these particular commercial buildings. If I just quickly run through the plans, you'll see that's the roof. Right, here we go. So in terms of, let me go to the next slide actually, impacts on the neighbour, which is, this is the sensitive side to the residential neighbour, and as you can see, it's actually sloping roof, it slopes away. So it starts at sort of fence level height, slightly above, and then slopes away, and it's considered that distance is sufficient to ensure that there isn't significant impact on that neighbour. So if I take that to this particular slide here, you'll see that's the neighbouring residential building, and what they've done is started at that particular level and then sloped the whole building away. So in other words, it's set away, the highest part of the element is set away from the neighbouring properties. Originally they were proposing another story, I believe, earlier on another iteration. So that's been significantly altered. There's a outside balcony at first floor level, but that's going to be screened, so again there's no significant overlooking to the neighbours. The report sets out the impacts and considers them all in the round, and overall it's considered that the scheme is considered to be acceptable in this particular case. Thank you.
We don't have any speakers to this, so questions please. Yes, Councillor Raynes.
Previously, a long time ago, this site was used as a garage or petrol station in some way. It was, it says on there, has it been, is it contaminated on? Because I know it's gone to shop use after that, which is that goes residential. It presumably is not contaminated on, but I've got to check.
Well, you've not really done the office development, yes, that was the case, but having said that, depends on when it was. I mean, that's a long time ago. I don't know when that actually was in terms of the petrol pumps. That was in the forecourts. The forecourt, I would suggest, probably is where the office building is now. Just a guess, they normally keep it at the front of the site. It seems to be a very, very historic situation. I don't think that's a particular problem in this case.
I just wanted just to inform my question, if you go back to some of the photographs, looking down between the rows of houses. Yes, that's a good one, back there. It seems to me that the sun at midday must be going straight down between the two rows of houses. because at the moment it's entirely open, that car park at the back of the office block. So when the building goes onto the office block, it's going to block the sun at midday from shining between the backs of the houses. I just wondered if there was a calculation of how much shadow it would cast into the most effective gardens.
And obviously that was a concern, and that's why the building's been designed in the fashion it's been designed. If I can take you through to the site layout plan. So that's the north here. So bear in mind you've got quite high buildings here already taking the sun. Obviously during the summer months the sun's going to be very high, there won't be a significant impact in any event. But that sloping roof is there. So these are the neighbouring gardens, what actually starts there. You've got that setback away from the neighbouring boundary by the walkways between the properties, and then you have this sloping roof. So this is actually just, I don't know the exact time, 2.5, 3 metres set away from the neighbours, and then it slopes away. So if we go back to that, here we go here. In terms of any sunlight, if you were to draw a line and say the sun was here, then the sun would have to be about here. These buildings are taller than that, by the way, a little bit taller. So I would suggest there's very little impact in terms of daylighting and sunlighting to the neighbouring properties. And there has been a report done as part of the application which demonstrates that there isn't a significant impact. So that has been looked at in detail.
Any further questions? Councillor Dean.
In terms of, is there a need for external space, garden space, etc.?
Yes, there is, and the report does discuss that. There is a balcony area. If you go back to it's only minimum space standards required because the size of the units are very small. But if we go back to here, you'll see some very small gardens here and here. They have patio doors onto those two small gardens. And if we go up a floor, you'll see there's a terrace here, but that is screened, that side and that side, so the terrace won't have any impact on the neighbouring properties there, and it's also set quite away as well. So yes, small accommodation and small gardens associated with it.
Councillor.
The refuse storage building or whatever, can you point it out for us?
Yes, as you can see, there's refuse storage as part of the development. Fortunately, this building is owned by both buildings, well, the car park and the building owned by the same people, so Waste are quite happy in terms of what's being proposed here.
When you go around and see these places, residents have always had a problem in disposing of their refuse in the containers provided to the developer. So you're going to make sure that they provide a refuse storage area before they occupy building, where the building is occupied.
Yeah, it's part of the proposal. I don't know whether we have that specific condition on here.
Yes,
condition 6 apparently we have got it.
6.
Yeah, we have got that condition on there, so it will have to be provided. We're very careful. I mean, we understand obviously we have containers, etc. All houses use them, so all new bin stores we've got to be very careful in terms of how we design new developments because it can take up quite a bit of space.
No more questions? Yeah? Comments?
I just think it's an overdevelopment. I think it's too many compromises. I think the ugly building at the front, if they're just going to convert that, fine. But frankly, the whole site needs looking at. Because whatever they do at the front, that could easily make it more difficult for the people at the back. There isn't any space for waste. I don't know how that car is ever going to turn around there and get out again. It's just not going to do it. And therefore it's going to start to lead to problems at the front where bins are going to be left. And we've all got homes in our wards where waste bins are left on public domain because there is nowhere else for them to go. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I think it's overdevelopment. I think it should be rejected and they should come back with something a bit smaller. So it works for the residents that are going to live there, but also for the residents who live around it.
Any other comments? Okay, then move to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Those against? So the recommendation is agreed. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 7, which is 36 Grenfell. Can I just say, with this, it has my name on the bottom, I just queried whether the application was policy compliant. That's all I have not made a comment on this application at all. And and so I think I am able to take part in the debate. Thank you.
Yes, the application is for the demolition of the existing building on the site. If we just come on to that, you'll see this end terrace house at the moment. It's got this Undercroft scenario which will disappear because obviously that's going to all be demolished and they're going to rebuild with the new building on the site. Again, you can see the Undercroft there, so this whole element of the property will be removed. Again, showing the Undercroft and the rear area. So again, that's all going. That's just a photograph of the neighbouring properties on Bruce Road, shows the proximity. We have looked at that very carefully because that is quite a sensitive situation. They're not very long gardens, and so we're aware in terms of any impact from this particular development here might have an impact on the neighbours there, but we have carefully looked at that. I'll come on to a slide in a minute to show how we have managed that. Just a few more photographs. You'll see the site here. It's the existing building, and this is the proposal. So there is a basement as part of this. And if we go through the floors, I'm afraid you're probably not going to be able to see those in great detail, but I think you can get the gist of it. Basement, ground, first floor, and the rear elevation has a door on the back of the property. And hopefully come on to the relevant, that gives an impression of what's being proposed. And this is the sort of slide of some importance. The existing building is shown in red. And actually you can't quite see. It's what you can actually see is the green there, which is the wing at the rear of the house, which should impact on the neighbours but set away. And actually what this slide is meant to show in blue, actually, which is quite good. There's a small element that projects only 1 metre further along. Well, actually, no, it's the actual, sorry, my fault, the side elevation is there, so you can see it actually projects about 1 metre further. So that's what extra those gardens will see next door. So we consider that very small projection there not to be significant enough to warrant refusal of the application. I say in all other respects the application is relatively minor in nature and considered to be acceptable. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Manning.
It has to do with
I just wanted to ask about the basement. How much of the property or the garden does it cover?
The basement itself, well, obviously it's an existing property, it's going underneath the entire property effectively, but obviously the rebuilding with the light well at the rear and the light well at the front. So if we go to that plan, I might be able to zoom in on it here. If we right click, that doesn't seem to do anything. Oh no, sorry. Just trying to remember how to do it. So if we come down to the basement here, you'll see that there's a significant portion of the site is actually covered by basement. But in effect, there wasn't really a rear area in any event. So we do accept this. It's quite a lot of site coverage in terms of basement. Well, it creates a back garden because the back garden effectively becomes a light well, which is technically part of the basement, but actually is open to the elements.
So I suppose my question is, based on the application we saw before, and talking about it having to be sort of 50% of the garden. So it relates to that, but also there's a point here, I think, page 51, 5.4, around this not strictly complying with the policy requirements, talking about the basement. So I suppose my question is it actually policy compliant, therefore?
It's one of these unusual ones where you wouldn't know that when the policy is written thinking of underground accommodation, when actually what they're creating here is it's difficult to say it's not part of the basement because it's actually part of the construction, but you're creating a light well, which is in effect an open area. So you can as the basement or not. The policy wasn't written with this sort of thing in mind. It's open to the elements as part of the create a garden down there, no planting of some description. So I think I'd probably say it's creating a garden rather than a basement. So there's retaining the garden that's already there rather than losing it.
Sorry. Sorry.
I was going to ask a question on the basement itself, because on page 52, paragraph 3, you say that no mitigation is proposed for groundwater and further decay is required to mitigate against the risk of groundwater, both during dewatering measures and chemical pumping. So did you get any information on that before you approved?
Well, there are conditions going to be attached to this particular commission, pre-commencement ones, which will insist on that information being provided.
So you're satisfied that, you know, this condition should allow the groundwater problems to be resolved?
Yes, well, yes.
So back to this kind of basement issue. Is the outside amenity space actually the bottom of the light well? And does that meet the criteria for standard outside amenity space?
It does in terms of the report if you go through it because of the size of the unit. So yes, it is. It's effectively lowering the garden. I think that's probably the easiest way to put it. So you're keeping the garden, but just lowering it. And then if we go through unit by unit in terms of what's been provided with that and under the balcony space, then it complies with what's required for flats. So it does comply with policy.
Any other questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm looking at the house, new house, abutting to the old one. And now, are you happy with the construction of the basement coming so close to an existing house? And do you know what those foundations, how they're put in? Because if they're spread foundations, you've got to keep further away from them, surely.
Yeah, that sort of determination, we can't know at this moment in time until they actually dig down, I suppose. There's no way of actually knowing, but in terms of the assessment that's been done, our engineers are happy with what's being proposed. Building control would be the issue covering that particular aspect, not necessarily planning. So they will have to build it in accordance with the information that's been provided.
Any other questions? Comments? Well, I can just say this site, the undercroft is was the entrance to the garages which one is it? That is right. No, there's two so close to one another. The site behind it is and was Grenfell garages, which we dealt with the planning application sometime back, 410 small houses with 4 flats on that site. So it felt like the natural exit for that proposal would have been through the undercroft, but it actually went out Inglemere Road, which was a narrow access point, which didn't seem right. And for me, it just seems a very, very complicated construction for such a small site. It's just a pathway through to. And I think my main concern is about the neighbours who are going to be in the terrace house, who's going to have a lump of wall taken out next to them, and I think I'd be quite worried about that. And I totally agree with the idea. I mean, the basement in that locality just seems so tiny. The space is small, we're talking about it. And I would be quite worried for the neighbouring tenants. Residents in the terrace house. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want someone knocking out the wall next to my house.
Can I just say, obviously, I mean, I'd be concerned as well, but I mean, it does happen quite often. It's not an unusual situation to get houses knocked down next door to other houses. They have to be propped up and properly done, and there's obviously surveyors involved. It's a very serious issue. I can't recall having any problems when it's occurring. Normally we would do through building control. They're fully aware that the neighbouring property will be able to take quite significant legal action if anything did occur that damaged their property.
Final comment. Well, I think the area is really densely populated, and the houses are not very big. So I think the building control, however, has got to keep an eye on this development. Just don't leave it to them to just let you go at the last minute when it's all done. But keep an eye to see that they, you can follow what the plan they approve, whether they approve tonight. Because, it's a populated That's an area that we can run through the risk with the water situation.
Yes, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, it depends whether we are the building control team dealing with it, because there is a competitive situation, so it may be a private approved perspective. But just to give you an indication, in terms of last week actually, on Woodside Road, we had a phone call from a concerned resident for a basement that was being built next door to a property, and we went down to the site and managed to persuade them that they'd already started digging out, and we got them to fill it back in again before they started moving any further, so they're going to have to rethink how they're doing that particular scheme. Clearly the neighbours were worried about it, but we find we normally get calls quite quickly if there is any concerns, and we can intervene if needed.
Yes, hang on. Going back to this basement wall, clearly the light well has got to be fairly deep to be fairly effective, and also the basement. Well, my view from experience is that to get a decent size, they're going to have to go down lower than next door's foundations, and that is always a problem. And it wouldn't be the first light bulb that's been glazed over and used as a conservatory. Is that allowed?
I don't think I've ever seen that before, but maybe it has occurred. In terms of the neighbouring foundations, I mean, if they are lower, then obviously they can't undermine the neighbouring foundations because that wouldn't be allowable. They'd have to underpin the neighbouring foundations in those circumstances, and that's the usual solution to that.
Yeah, a party wall agreement might come too late.
Well, no, I mean,
I know that's not part of planning condition, so but I'm just looking from the neighbour's point of view. They've got potentially a lot of problems.
Well, again, party wall would normally cover that, and the surveyors would be involved, and I don't think there'd be any individual who wouldn't be very, very involved in terms of what's happening if they live next door to it, getting the experts involved, etc. And of course, the developer makes that, not next door neighbour.
I think there's a general conversation about maybe there's some issues here, and then it's just about understanding if those issues will lead to a vote against this, and if so, on what basis. It seems to me that bulk massing is coming in here, and I just think we need to decide if we're going to progress with that.
Alwyne, any comments?
My instinct was to refuse it on the basis I didn't like the subterranean kind of sunken garden with parts of the amenity space. It seems to be to offend the spirit of that policy. But I accept what Mr. Millennial says, it doesn't offend the letter of the policy, so I guess that's a non-fly of that. I just feel the whole thing seems a bit cramped and unneighbourly in its development. Is what Councillor Dean, I think, just said when he was talking about massing. The whole thing just doesn't really feel right to me, but I'm struggling to think exactly what the grounds for refusal are.
Maybe just on that point, in terms of bulk and scale, I mean, when we talk about, because the actual building itself, as you can see, is pretty much matching the neighbours in terms of bulk and size. It's not going higher or anything like that. It's actually just trying to finish the terrace off in the same fashion that it's built at this moment in time. So I don't think bulk and scale are a particular issue. It seems like you may be having concern with the basement again, but we're used to that.
Councillor?
Yeah, I know what I'm going to say won't have any effect with the allowed although because normally you can't. But normally when you do these things, as I say, I've got experience here. The problems for next door neighbour hit after everybody's finished and gone away. That's when the talks start. But as I say, that's when you look into the detail of the construction. That's no reason to turn down planning.
Just on that point, just to confirm, I mean, if you've got experience of it, the surveyors will then, they'll do a survey of the neighbouring property, they'll put measurements on if necessary, and if things do come up in the next 2-3 years afterwards, they can come back to them and actually get them to fix it.
That's an end of terrace, isn't it, right?
Yes.
Right, okay. Having lived in an end of terrace house, I remember when I wanted an extension, people said to me, no, it can't happen because it's very small. But, looking at what it looks like now, I think it will improve the area quite well, and also because of end of terrace, it might end up taking more space than you think they are. So we shouldn't be too adamant and be judgmental about space.
Any other comments? To move to the vote? Those against? Not voting? Then the application is approved. We now move on to agenda item 9, which is garages, again, Fragrant Board, into the 38 Legal Mill.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this site not too far away from the other site, if you look at Grenfell Road up there. And this was the development of 10 units that was previously granted. So now what we have is a very similar scenario with garage at the back of these properties and the proposal for 4 houses. If we run through the slides, you'll see the entrance to the property, and it's a tarmacked area, and these are the existing garages. If you'll see just one point I've made is it's a fenced area, so it's locked most of the time, you can't get in there, so it's not something these garages, clearly they're in a condition where they are used, but I'd probably suggest they're used for storage rather than day-to-day use of vehicles of any particular kind. So as you can see, the site is quite big, and it is hemmed in by residential properties around and gardens. The report goes into the impact and how the proposal has been designed to ensure it doesn't significantly impact on those residential gardens. And as you can see from the site layout, this is the entrance through. You've got the units here. Now this and this unit, they're all 2-storey units. But because of the proximity to the rear gardens here, this particular unit here is only single-storey. So actually it's not much different to the garages that are there now. In fact, it's a very similar height. And in fact, it extends, the building that is proposed extends less than the garages we want now, understand, come down further down to here. So you actually, if you were one of these properties here, you actually get garages removed from the back of the garden. In any event, they're only 2.53 metres high. So as you can see, this is the second-storey element. So that's very much located centrally within the site, so it doesn't impact on the neighbours significantly. There are some mechanisms used in terms of the windows and the orientation of the windows and the screw glazing, etc. Again, explained in the report how they are set away from the neighbours, so therefore it doesn't have that same impact. So if we look now, it's a backland site. It's pretty much not viewed from any public viewpoints. The design approach is with these flat roofs, relatively modern. And if we run through that, we'll see there's a good example of that single-storey element. So these are all 2-storey elements, but where it backs on to the immediate onto those particular gardens, it's just been taken away entirely at that level. So that's the actual view that those nearest gardens will see. So again, there are no windows in any of those elevations, and that element is set a good 4 or 5 metres further away. So officers consider it's been well designed. It has sufficient car parking spaces. It doesn't impact significantly the neighbours. There's no basement. So it's considered to be acceptable in this particular case. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Dennis.
I assume that the gap between the two houses where the alley gate is going to be something now. Yes, that's right.
It's the current entrance to all the garages, and it's now going to be to the...
Do I assume the garages used to be along the houses?
I don't think... Originally, normally when garages like that are built, it would be associated with the houses. We can't be sure. It was a long time ago, and I don't think there's any... There might be some association of people using them, but it's nothing that we could do. We have our neighbours saying, these are our garages.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor.
Apart from, are the garages used scaffolded, or because you showed a gate, but that could mean the owners of the
garages have a key to that gate to get in the cars. If they're used as garages creating problems of 20 probably extra car parking spaces required in the area.
Yes, we have looked at that aspect, even assuming the worst case scenario. You see the report, there have been surveys of parking in the area, and there are quite a number of available spaces for parking. I think the report has exact numbers, but I think it was between 30 and 40, was it? 48 spaces found in the area, so even if some of these were used for day-to-day parking, and looking at the you look at the actual ground area as well, you've got quite a bit of grass on there. It doesn't look like it's being travelled on every day. So even if they were all used for car parking, we don't consider that would be a significant impact in any event.
Councillor Haley.
On page 100, paragraph 7.15, you mentioned something here about angled privacy screens. What are they? What is that for?
It's a mechanism to ensure you don't have direct looking over the neighbours, so you can have screens that would allow light to come in the sides, or there's different ways of doing it, oil windows sometimes called. So it lets the light come in, you can sort of see sideways out of your windows, so you've got a little bit of view, but you can't see directly into the neighbouring garden. That's the concept.
It makes the place look bigger than it is.
No, it's not bigger. No, it's just to stop the overlooking.
Oh, I see.
Are there any other questions? No. Comments?
For the first time ever, I'm going to say the developer's not been selfish, has been reasonable, has understood the neighbours, and I would support it if everybody else does. I'll never say that again.
Okay, I'm going to move to the vote on the basis of that one. So, those in favour, please show. Good Lord, please see that. Thank you. That's recommendations approved. We now move on to plots ABC 3 Lincoln Avenue.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the application site is located on the eastern side of Lincoln Avenue from northern.
Just stop a minute. Can I ask which application you went for? This one. All right. I was going to say, because it wasn't, I'll move it up.
Oh,
okay.
yeah, no, thank you.
Okay.
Located in the northern area of Wimbledon Village. Currently comprises a construction site following the implementation of the previous planning permission for 3 dwellings on the site. The site surroundings is largely residential, a mixture of largely detached residential properties. Proposal itself is for 3 detached dwellings on the site. The dwellings would be of modern design, but with use of traditional materials. So external materials comprise facing brick, anything with metal roof and dark grey finish and dark grey frame windows. Each dwelling will be similar in appearance to and scale to each other. Accommodation will be over 4 floors, including a basement, and off-street parking will be provided at the front of each dwelling. So talking you through the plans, members, so there's the one dwelling used to occupy the site. Planning permission was granted under 2016 reference number in your agenda for 3. This proposal is for 3 houses of different design, but in a similar position on the site. Talking you through the plans, this is the proposed basement plan for each property. So it's a row of 3 houses. You'll see the basement floor as a build is done under 1. 3 detached properties above, so ground level for each one, parking at the front, side access for each dwelling. And first floor here and then the second floor above. Roof plans, and the roof's proposed largely flat roof with a section to the main roof itself with a slight pitch on it, which you'll see on the elevations here. So this is the proposed. That's the front elevation. Street scene drawing up here. To the right hand side, you'll note there's a dwelling of similar design that's been constructed under permission. Then these 3 dwellings here are proposed. At the rear, you'll note that they're proposing second floor within this scheme. Under the previous permission, there was a second floor within the scheme, within the roof void. The main difference is that the previous permission had Velux windows within the roof, whereas this one has normal windows, you could say, within the roof. Side elevations, so this will be facing brickwork. There is tree planting as part of the scheme, so at the back of the gardens there will be later lawn at the back, additional tree planting to the boundaries. And that's just putting it into a bit of context. You should note that below the plan here there is a house here which is on that plan. Sorry, that's right. I'm on to the previous scheme here. So this is for information. This is the previous approval. So as you can see, 3 detached dwellings. Largely, you could say a bit more traditional in design. That's just a bit of information. Turn to some pictures. As I said, the site is a construction site, so we've actually got some pictures of the surrounding area. So these are 2 new properties recently constructed southeast of the site. These type of houses are opposite. That's the site itself. That's the Morden home just recently built to the right of the site, as on the street scene drawing. These are houses opposite to the west. And that's further around the corner to the north. So members of the tool, draw attention to the update sheet. You'll see the correction to the actual description of the proposal. And also one additional letter of representation received from Area Occupied. Overall, members, the site does have permission for 3 houses. This is a new application for 3 houses in different design and scale. But overall, we consider it to be acceptable. We recommend permission be granted subject to conditions and legal agreement. Thank you.
I think you want to point something out, don't you, Councillor Meekin? 255 and 1 by 6.
There's another one we can't point out.
Go on then.
If you look at paragraph 7.6 out of the foundation, there's a long paragraph here. There's loads of paragraphs here. The first one has house numbers in it and number of bedrooms 565, which is now the correct figure as opposed to what was at the beginning. On the last paragraph on this page, it starts with, it might be a completely different thing, but those could explain it to me. It says, if you turn over, it says the first house, 8 persons, the second house, 10 persons, and the third house, 8 persons. Those numbers don't agree with the numbers on that table.
It's been proofreading.
You see what I mean?
Yeah. I say 2 by 5 and 1 by 6, but in that table it says 2 by 6. No, that's right. Anyway, there are corrections to be made there. Any questions? Councillor Crowe, sorry. Yeah.
When we were looking at the photographs, it seemed as if the original scheme was more like the houses opposite. But then I think when we looked at some drawings, there's the photograph, houses adjacent to the proposed development are similar to what we're now considering. I just want to be clear, what is actually happening is that on one side of the street you have a more traditional roofed house, and on the development side of the street you have a more modern block style house.
Yeah, so on these 2 houses here front Somerset Road, and the other house next to the site is similar to this, which fronts Lincoln Avenue. So so on that particular side of Lincoln Avenue, there are these side of this house and the other modern one that faces Lincoln Avenue, and then it would be these three as you go further north.
I was more or less going to ask the same question over the thing on the end there. We are looking at the first design, the one you showed first, because they look more like lots of flats than houses. But I was going to ask a question about matching up to what's already there. You know, they look out of place.
Councillor Henry, did you have a comment?
I hope this is appropriate. Paragraph 23, it says no development shall take place until the scheme for the storage of refuse and recycling has been submitted. I hope I got the wrong one. Right? Sorry. Yeah,
I'll tell you what, we'll take it.
Sorry, that's fine.
I
do apologise.
Okay, that's okay. Any further questions? No. Comments? No? It seems very similar to the previous scheme that's been granted. There's a long history here of things being granted and nothing happening. Like to have an application since 2016 and it's sitting there and now here we go again. maybe they'll build it this time. So those in favour, can we please show? Those against? Not voting. Thank you, then the application is approved. So we now move on to 72 South Down Road, Raynes Park.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the application site is a two-storey dwelling house, currently a 5-bedroom house, and the proposal is to convert it into one 3-bedroom flat and one 2-bedroom flat. The house itself has had recently built dormer windows on the rear roof elevation, and the proposal also would make use of that space. This is the existing plans, so ground, first and second floor. So the ground floor does benefit from a rear extension, single-storey extension at the moment. That's the house there, very traditional within the road itself. The proposal is for a conversion to two-bed flat at ground floor level, so bedroom here, and then living space here, bathroom here. External changes to the building will be two front doors as opposed to one front door. So that'll be the main visual change at the front, along with bin storage facilities at the front. At first floor above will be a 3-bedroom unit, so 2 bedrooms within the dormer windows in the roof, 1 bedroom first floor, and then the living space run the full length of the building as well. So elevation-wise, you see the main change, additional door here. Clearly the plots are divided as well at the back, so fence will be drawn out so that the ground floor flat has direct access, but the first floor flat would also have access to outdoor space at the back of the property. Overall, members, the scheme does comply with the space standards and also the council policy really stating the 3-bedroom unit within the scheme. So overall, we do think it's 2 good sized flats and recommend officially granted. Thank you.
That's one of the reasons every conversion of our small family dwellings in my ward, and now we're smothered with them. I would say I have a lot of sympathy with the neighbours here, but can't see there's going to be any reason why we can turn it down, but I'll put it to questions. No questions.
Can we make the flat dwellers not have a right to parking permits?
So that is recommended, but it would only be tied to the net unit, so one of the units, as the existing property does benefit from getting a permit. So it's about mitigating the impact of the additional unit. So that's what the 106 room would capture there. So it wouldn't be both.
Any comments? Move to the vote. Those in favour, please show.
Can I ask colleagues whether they support the idea of a limit on the...
If we could hear you.
Oh, sorry. I was just wondering what colleagues' views were on the limit on a parking permit, given that it's split into two separate dwellings. Should we actually make that a condition that only one of the flats can have a eligible parking permit? Oh, you have that?
Yeah, we've done that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I
Just an additional unit.
misunderstood. It's getting
Yeah, okay. So those in favour, please show. Those against. Recommendation is carried. We move to 7 Sunnyside Place.
Members, the application site 7 Sunnyside Place, the south side of Sunnyside in Wimbledon, comprises one out of a row of terrace dwelling houses, set over 3 floors. Proposal itself is for extensions and alterations to the host dwelling, including 3-storey rear extension here, ground floor rear extension, which is the dark line, conversion of garage to handle accommodation, infill front porch, installation of new balustrades to the front terrace. Talking through the plans. So, proposed ground floor extension, you can see marked here, 3.8 metres. At first floor above, the rear extension is actually stepped in from the boundary by half a metre and has a depth of 1.95 metres. You'll note to the north, to the top, that the depth of the first floor above extension matches the depth of the neighbouring one done. You'll see that in my site pictures when we get to them. This is the terrace at the front, so there's a new balustrade here. And top floor. At the rear, the design of it, the proposed extension is to match the neighbouring one here on the left. The garage conversion, we've replaced the garage doors with 2 glazed windows within the doors. And the single floor extensions, flat roof design. Side elevations. So the proposals here, that's showing the neighbouring one in the background, and the terrace at the front. So this is site pictures. So this is the application site. On the left, you can see what has been allowed next door. So the proposal at first floor level and above would match that in terms of depth and design. That you'll see it has been stepped in from the boundary, and we asked for that under this application. So we did get them in the plans. It originally was submitted on the boundary here, but we actually asked them to step it in to make it acceptable as beyond the ground floor. Clearly, it's a tall structure, so to mitigate the impacts on the adjoining neighbour to the right hand side. That's its design there. Looking the other way, so the neighbour mainly impacted by the proposal is this one. At the front, you'll see some people have sort of modernised these terrace properties, so some people have he's put some large cladding here where his garage used to be. This is the site here, and here next door as well. So overall, members, having looked at it, we think it's acceptable, subject to conditions. Thank you.
Precedent's been set at number 6. So, any questions? Any comments? Shall we agree the recommendation? Those in favour, please show. That's it, unanimous, that's agreed. And now we've got to note the planning and build decisions. we have one, two, three, four allowed, and what is it, five. Wow, have we been out allowed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dismissed. And 5 allowed. And on the enforcement report, you'll notice this is a slimmed down version. Excess baggage removed, I think we could say. If you do have any enforcement issues in your ward that you want to have taken up, please talk to officers about them. Okay. But anyway, these are current tasks, and I think if there have been no changes on these in the next month, I think we should just report no change.
Yes, as I say, it's been rationalised quite, but there's still some work to be done. That's just the important issue. We've got about 850, 900 cases outstanding at the moment, so that's just the ones that are in action, as it were, but to formal action. Obviously, there is impact in terms of the other investigations as well.